Good evening and welcome to the regular board meeting of USD253 Board of Education. We have 8 board members present. Oh, 7, sorry. Long day. I was in the sun. Okay. I would take a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
I move for approval as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to item 3A, program highlight from Timmerman Elementary.
Mrs. Lori Curzon, principal of Timmerman Elementary, is here with students and teachers. We welcome them.
Hello, we are the Timmerman Student Council. My name is Hayden Trujillo. I'm a 5th grade teacher at Timmerman. And then we have Megan Day and Hannah Anderson, who are both student support specialists. And we 3 make up the adults on our student council. Tonight, we are joined by 11 of our 20 members of our first ever Timmerman Student Council. Our goal is to jumpstart our intermediate students to prepare them for leadership roles in their futures. And there they all are. There are all 20 members of our student council. This year has been our first year of having a student council. We are so excited to share with the board how our year has gone.
Our council is made up of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade Timmerman students. Members of the student council must first be nominated by a staff member for demonstrating strong leadership skills. Then, all nominees apply to join the council. A committee then reviewed the applications and selected 20 members out of 49 nominees. We are student leaders who possess leadership skills. We are expected to be positive role models who go above and beyond the expectations here at school. We have official meetings every other Monday after school until 4 o'clock and have volunteered additional time outside of school too. Our Stuco has hosted or assisted 2 fundraising events. The first one was a gingerbread house contest. This contest was for just 3rd through 5th grade students who paid an entry fee. Then, the whole school voted on a winner. Next year, we are wanting to open up the contest to the whole school to participate.
The second event was the Bulldog Gala. This was not something that Stuco hosted, but 2 of our members went to the gala and took photo booth pictures for a suggested donation of $1. We plan to use the money that we have raised for projects next year.
One of our favorite things we've done in Stuco this year is character education lessons. We partnered up and were assigned a primary classroom to teach in 4 times this year. The topics were chosen by Mr. Hio, Miss Day, and Miss Anderson. And then we got to prepare and plan the lessons and the activities. The topics we covered include kindness, integrity, honesty, conservation, and citizenship.
It has been so fun to get to know the primary students and spend time in their classrooms. Our hope is that they are inspired to demonstrate good character and that they now have a positive older student they can come to if they need help in the future.
Our very first Stuco duty was to run the annual KVOF food drive. We all worked together to plan the reward, monitor the donations, and count the totals. Unfortunately, we did not meet our school-wide goal, but our top 2 classrooms got a prize pizza party celebration.
Our big Stuco family involvement involvement even doubled as a fundraiser for us. We hosted and planned a readout night, like bingo, for Timmerman families to come, have fun, and get some books. We first ran a book donation drive, and we used the books as prizes. Then we worked together to plan the event and work the event ourselves, but adults did help us.
We are so impressed with the attendance for our first ever evening event. 39 families attended with a total attendance of 154 people. We are so excited to use our profits to both celebrate our accomplishments for this year and jumpstart some cool projects next year.
We have spent the year discussing changes we'd like to see happen at Timmerman. One of these changes is to implement Friday seat choice days. 3 members of our STUCO prepared a presentation for our principal, Miss Kirsten, to maybe inspire a change that students would like to see at our school.
And I will interject here real quick. And their proposal was approved by Ms. Curzon. So we are excited to get that started, I believe, next Friday.
The second change we would like to see would happen next year. We have a lot of extra books from our Rito book drive. We hope to use those books and this year's raise funds to install and run a little free library in front of our school. We know this will be a lot of work, but we are excited to get started on it in August.
It doesn't really.
Lastly, volunteer work is important for our leaders. During the Halloween dog costume contest, 3 members took photo booth pictures for the event. On April 28th, Timmerman will be hosting a Nacho Average afternoon. We plan to assist with this event while also enjoying some nachos with our own families. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We hope you enjoyed it. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions?
What questions do we have for this outstanding group of students this evening?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say great job today and great job being future leaders. I think you're off to a great start, and we're excited to see the work you're doing and the character you're building, and expect a lot of great things from you.
I'll say thank you on behalf of them.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. Great job. Okay, item 3B, Kansas Teacher of the Year, highlights of our district.
Okay, bringing Mrs. Erica Huggard, who's K-12 finalist, and she hosted last week the other finalists and K-12 winners. So she's here to talk a summary about that.
Okay, I'm going to bring my phone up here so that I don't get too windy and talk too long about this. For those of you that know me, you know that I'm a huge advocate for public schools. So I've had just an unbelievable experience this semester traveling around the state and advocating for future teachers, but also getting to experience what's happening in districts around the state. And I've had just a huge amount of pride in the districts that I visited, which we go to every team member's district. And thankfully, we scheduled my visit for April, which happens to be a really busy time for me, but I was the last visit and we saved the best for last. And so I'd like to introduce and start with the video.
Hey yo, I woke up this morning with the sunshine bright. Feeling good like my name was up in unsigned hype. This day is just my type. The breeze feel full of promise. The positive vibes could turn a crooked man honest. Thank the gods and the goddesses far. Earth soaring around and wishing upon a star. The human heart is full of so much music and art. I'm doing my part. It's such a beautiful start. Remain smart, you can smell. This is all just a phase. We dwell in a cicada falling away. Our cities and cars ancient, nothing but cave paintings. Once we go beyond the vibe of the space station, imagination, it makes a person adapt. Just like jazz became funk, then turned into rap. These words on my pad I wrote so you can find hope. Cause even with all of the bad, yo, humankind's
I know you got it going on, but now you gotta go on. Ain't no limit, going on, but now you gotta go beyond. Don't get caught in the undertow of the comfort
A lot of
zone.
y'all grown up need adult supervision, fighting each other over cult superstitions, loving everyone's own true religion. We need to practice that with some kung fu precision, cause what you were missing's hidden deep in your heart. It's time for all of us to wake up so the dreaming can start, then we can embark. My logic is the truth is love, so we don't need these post-apocalyptic cool kid clubs. Let's unite locally, then get globally strong, so we can go beyond before the chance is totally gone. I'm vocally open, promoting potent.
So that just kind of gives you a quick overview of our
Hey yo,
visit.
I woke up this morning.
That's okay. It's good to watch a few times if you want to. No, we had really a great time, and you got to see some of my team members on there. We're all very passionate about education. And when we brought our team members to our districts, it was our goal to really highlight the things that we are doing well and show off some of the awesome experiences that we have available to our students. So we started our day at the high school. We were welcomed by the band, and I didn't have any pictures of that. But our band welcomed us with a fight song and a couple other very popular songs from our band. And then we had a breakfast, and our breakfast, after our breakfast, we had a panel with our future teaching pathway. And Laura Schwinn has done just an amazing job with this pathway, and she's grown it in just a short time. We now have 25 students in that pathway, and I got to hear about our numbers today. They're going up again for next year. And so we were really excited to hear from high school students who are out in classrooms, and they're getting experience with students, and they're starting to learn a little bit about lesson planning. We also got to take a few questions from them. And it was just a really awesome opportunity for us to connect with those aspiring educators. Then we headed over to the Jones Early Childhood Education Center, which I was really excited to show off because Mallory Keefe is a preschool teacher from Cheney. And we got to show how collaborative the process was in developing the plans for our Jones Early Childhood Education Center. Look at my time. And we also got to see all the community partnerships that are happening in that building. And Joy did just an amazing job showing us around. And all of the teachers, teachers on the team were beyond impressed with what we're offering at the Jones Early Childhood Center. So that was our first stop after Emporia High School. And then we got to hear from the Stuco representatives at Timmerman. So that kind of gave them some practice for tonight. We got to hear about that program. I heard lots of great things from the elementary teachers on my team about what a great idea that is to start Stuco early and how that feeds into middle school and high school Stuco programs. And we got a tour of the school, and they also made some 3D printed Kansas Teacher of the Year keychains for us. So everywhere we went, it really feels like they rolled out the red carpet for us and made us feel special and welcome. Then we went to the high school, which we had to make sure that our teachers were fed well, and we fed them with Casa Ramos, and so that was a really nice lunch. And then we did a tour of what the bond improvements did and the wing, the science wing. And so, of course, they were really intrigued to be in my room. We like to go into each other's rooms and see what it's like in their world. So we took a few pictures there. But I really wanted to show off our CTE and talk about our pathways in the science department. And then we went over to technology, and that's the next slide. And we got to see some of the new equipment that's been purchased there. And Mr. Keaton Tuttle actually engraved these cups for us. And so Mr. Skinner there is pushing the button, and I thought that was pretty cool to watch the Kansas Teacher of the Year be etched into these cups. After that, we went to theater, and I wanted them to make sure that they talked about in theater. Casey, I wanted her to share about the success that our theater has had this year. And so she talked about the recognition that our theater department received in the fall. And then this was a really awesome thing that our theater department is doing, which they can take this set down and put it back up in 15 minutes. And they travel to the elementary schools, and they're doing a 55-minute show, which maybe you all know about. But what was really neat is that every one of the costumes that the students made for this, for like Wilbur and Charlotte, they designed and made themselves. and everything about their attire, went with the costume. So my team was very impressed with the idea of the outreach from the high school to the elementary, and then just the creativity of these students to take those resources and completely design and make their costumes. And just the idea of serving too, continuing to give back. And so the next slide, you can see some of the individual costumes, and even the geese, they're different because each student designed them differently. So I thought that was kind of cool. After that, we got to spend a lot of time in our art department, and that was intentional. You can see in the middle there, that's Jessica Gazzano, and she's an art teacher from Spring Hill. And I also really wanted to show the special things that we do at Emporia High School that are not common in lots of schools. And so I talked to Miss Hammond, and she was willing to let us use torches, and she was willing to help us design something so that we could make a keychain before we left. And so another thing that I want to emphasize is how involved our students were in this tour. We stood side by side with students at the tables, and they were the ones that gave us the directions on how to cut out the apple. And then after we cut, which they cut most of it out for us, we only had to cut a little bit, because that's kind of hard. And then how to add the enamel before we actually use the torch. So the students, I was so impressed, because we would ask, well, why? And I expect maybe they didn't know the answer to the why. But every time we asked the question, well, why do we do it this way? They were able to give us the explanation for why, which to me, if you can have somebody lead it, well, then also, I left there going, you guys have such great skills at teaching us, and you understand the why. Maybe you should be a teacher. Have you ever thought about being a teacher? So we had a really great time. I was so impressed with the students in that class. And in addition to that, I have to say, Rebecca also had another class in there at the same time. And so she had invited in her advanced kids to help us while she had another class going on. And it's just so impressive how trained these students are in knowing what their expectations are and knowing what they're supposed to be doing. I would probably be nervous. So they're telling me there's 5 torches and all of these things that could happen in here, and it is a well-oiled machine. And so that was our keychain we made. And then the next, we just could go on and on about the glass blowing. And Grant was awesome, because not only is he really good at teaching us and letting us be involved in the process of glass blowing, his whole class was still going about their business and doing their advanced projects in ceramics. But he's also just such a great storyteller. I feel like we should record him and put out snippets about it, because he's just awesome to watch. And if you listen to him, he has good, funny dad jokes. And he was just an awesome entertainer, in addition to the incredible experience. I mean, how many people have been able to actually blow glass and actually, mold it like we did there. So, I mean, that's like a once in a lifetime thing. And finally, we ended up at the end of the tour at the middle school, which I knew there was a surprise coming, but I didn't know what the surprise was. And the Emporia Middle School, after the after-school program, Spartan Extra, actually had been working for several weeks on a song for us. And they also had a little a part from the Willy Wonka Chocolate Factory song. But the song that they sang to us when they welcomed us, I mean, I cried. It was just so sweet. Not only did they sing, but they also did a dance. And then I found out, this was a partnership between an Emporia State student that needed to teach line dancing. And there was like all this thought and preparation. And they sang, they changed the lyrics to Party in the USA to the lyrics about welcoming the K-Toy team. And I mean, it was just awesome. After that, we did hear their Act It Out group, which was like probably 45 to 50 students sing a song from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And they were amazing. I couldn't believe how well they did. So as you can tell, like, I'm super proud of the visit. I'm so proud of public education, and I'm really just re-energized. And I had such an amazing experience in my own district, seeing the great things that my colleagues are doing. And so I talked to Judy about it and like, this is like the best professional development that I could ever get. For me, I feel so invested and I feel so proud of what's happening here. And I think that was just an awesome opportunity. And I want that to continue for other staff and for people in the community. I mean, it's just amazing. So I asked my team, who had an overwhelmingly very positive experience, to give me one thing that was their favorite. And so each of them said, well, if I had to choose one, because they really, really, really loved the visit. Brian said he loved the teaching as a career pathway in that panel discussion. Jessica Gazzano, again, oh my goodness, it's hard to pick, but I'm going to go with, she said, the after school program at EMS and all the collaboration that's happening there with the community and those teachers. She was blown away. And then Mallory Keefe said the early childhood center. She loved that. Jamie Swindler was super impressed with the science wing, the classes that we offer, display cases, human brains. They were surprised I have those in my classroom. I do. And Kendall Norberg was really impressed with our district's priority to keep class sizes lower. And she said, in her opinion, that sets your district apart and it makes a huge difference, which, she's obviously saying that is not the way that it works in her district. And Carly Torres, she said she loved all the opportunities that we are giving students in arts and glass blowing. And then Pamela Munoz, she said that she loves a variety of classes and the idea that we would go to the work to provide our staff daycare. I mean, we had lots and lots of good conversations about that. So I just wanted to thank you. I probably went over time by a lot for this opportunity to share these good things with you, and just to let you know that like I felt so welcomed, and I'm so appreciative for the partnership that I had with Lindell and Judy to help me make this happen, and every building administrator to welcome us and just really roll out the carpet for us. So it was an unforgettable experience. Thank you.
Well, we thank you. And we're really proud of you, Erica. So thank you for sharing. Yes, thank you. Okay, item 3C, public comments. Public comments will be allowed with the duration of 3 minutes per speaker to be timed by the board clerk. And speakers must sign up for in-person public comment by 1 p.m. the day of the board meeting. The public comment by email or remote not be accepted, and that those giving public comment not approach the board or move past the podium. No handouts will be allowed, but such materials may be emailed in advance to the board clerk for distribution to the board. And that public comment may not include reference to names of specific students and/or personnel matters, which would potentially violate an individual's privacy. And that the board will not engage in discussion at this time except to gain clarification. Anyone wishing to provide public comment should complete the request on our website by 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the day of the board meeting. Casey, do we have any public comment this evening?
We do have one.
Okay.
Sarisa Howe, come on up.
Ms. Blue. Okay, as Casey says, my name is Sarisa Howe. I came here today because, as you know, student safety is a big concern. We had an incident at the high school recently. Thankfully, there was no victims to that incident. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case in August. My son was a victim. He was attacked in the football locker room. He was physically attacked. He was sexually assaulted. He was not kept safe. I know that's a big part of the board, is to provide that safe environment. He was not kept safe. There were several policies that weren't followed. So I'm here today. I'm begging you, please, please address the policies. Please. If they're not followed, do something about it. So many weren't followed. We've heard nothing that was done. Following the attacks, my son had to be in the same locker room as his attackers. The same locker room. He had to share the same hallway the next day. The day after that, nothing was done. How does that make a victim feel? Again, I'm asking for more policies, but I'm really asking if a policy wasn't followed, please do something. Take into consideration policies for victims. Through this whole thing, we felt like he had no rights. It was more about protecting the attackers information. He was given no heads up that they were going to be right back in the locker room, that they were going to be right back in the hallway. Think about what that does to someone's mental health. Through this whole thing, his mental health was not even acknowledged. I don't know how many times we were told. We consulted our attorneys. Never was it known if you guys consulted a psychologist, a psychiatrist. What about the victims and what they're going through? It was not just my son. There were several victims, not just one day. We know there's policies about being in the locker room. Those were definitely not followed. That provided the opportunity for the other kids to do that to my son, to the other victims. We've got to come up with something to deter these kids from the future doing this. Because right now, it looks like you can go do it. You're back in school. We all know there's been a few kids caught with drugs, boom, they're out for the rest of the year. But you can go attack another human, sexually assault them, and be right back in the school. This cannot be right. Show us that the student's safety is important.
Thank you. That takes us to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine business. I'm almost there. Approval of the items may be made by a single motion, second, and majority vote with no separate discussion of any item listed. Should a member of the board desire to discuss any item at his or her request, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Does anyone have anything they'd like to remove from the agenda this evening? If not, I would take a motion to approve.
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 6A, PAES, Practical Assessment Exploration System.
We have Mrs. Tara Glaines, Director of Student Services, here to talk about the PACE program, as well as Michelle Wells and Evelyn Gibson.
We are really excited to be here. Unfortunately, Casey Johnson, our special ed instructional coach who was to be here, is ill, so she could not be here with us. So we've picked up her slides. This has been a year in the making. Michelle Wells first brought information about the PACE system to Mr. Fisher and myself in April of 2022. So we have done our research, we have been patient, we have talked a lot about this, and now we're excited to bring this information to you. So the PACE system, it's the Practical Assessment Exploration System. So 3 things about why are we here talking about this. So we do have a responsibility to provide services to some students who are 18 to 21 as a mandate for the Individual Disabilities Education Act if they need assistance during that 18 to 21-year-old period. The students that have the most significant needs are often those students who require that additional support. We have a wonderful program in the Transitions program. It is always not appropriate for every student. Those students need to be able to work semi-independently, and that is not always something that all of our students with the most significant level of need can do. So what we've determined is that we do need additional opportunities. We need something that creates additional experiences for our students that have those most significant needs. So that's why we are here to talk about that. So PACE is a research base functional skills curriculum. It has embedded assessment within it, so students don't realize they're actually being assessed, which is a great thing. It was actually created by a special education teacher from Kansas, so yay, Kansas. It has been in use at Emporia High School before. There are pieces of it that are still there, but it's here and there, and we've supplemented with some teacher-made materials and whatnot. So it has been utilized before. So any student with an IEP can use the PACE system. You can see down there that we have listed, students with learning disabilities, students with our most significant disabilities, multiple disabilities, students who might have physical disabilities. So it's really for every student who might have a disability.
So some of the expected outcomes are for the PACE program would be that students with disabilities will practice real-world hands-on skills, discover interests, and gain skills to increase independence. From my experience with my meetings with my families during our IEP times, talking about transition, these are the things that they're looking for. They're wanting their children to have these real-world hands-on skills, employability skills. This is what they're looking for. Sometimes they require a little bit more structure. Sometimes they need that familiar environment, and this would provide it for them.
I'm the long-winded one, so just tell me to be quiet if I need to. You can see up there are 5 components to this PACE program. This is an updated program from what we had 25 years ago. Carrie Wallace was the first one to bring this one into our district. So the computer technology has been updated. You have construction, you have processing, production, you have consumer, you have services, fast food, you have marketing, all kinds of areas for students to work on. The 5 components allow students to try every component, and for the teacher, the paras, whoever, to then analyze what they've done, find their interest, find what their high skill level is, things like that. So it teaches the students real job experience, time management, skill progression. It starts students at a lower level, and they can work their way up to a more complex component of whatever they're working on, whether it be computers or construction or whatever. So as they said earlier, it will evaluate the students without the students knowing it. The good thing about the update also is it's computer-based for the teacher now. The teacher can go right into the computer program and input the information, and it will help her come up with what they need. Oh, yes, this is a high interest. This is high skill level for them, so on and so forth. It teaches the students problem solving, all kinds. I could go on and on and on about all the things. It's fine motor, it's gross motor, it's all the things that our students need to work on without realizing they're doing job skills. You are going to have updated things like learning to do a cash register, which is going to put a lot of students ahead of the game, especially if they want to move straight into going to work at the grocery store or wherever. They will learn how to work in putting orders together, fast food, if that's what they choose to do. They're going to measure, cut, do electrical, all kinds of opportunities that they probably would not have otherwise. Other things that to talk about is when I talk about real job experience, they will go in, they will clock in, they will be required to complete so many tasks, And if they don't complete those tests, then it's graded upon what they've completed and what they haven't completed, just like when you go to work. You have this to get done during your workday. Whether you get it done or not depends on you. So, this just starts our students into the process of what real job experience looks like.
Slide. So we did include kind of just a roadmap, a little makeshift example of what it could look like and has looked like as it's been installed in a classroom before. We're so fortunate that the high school bond construction is over. I think it's over. We're pretty much over. Yeah. I don't want to say that and then be like, oh no, we have that one more thing. But we did locate a classroom that Mr. Fisher has said would be perfect for PACE. I think it's 002. But they say that you need roughly 500 square feet. So this classroom will be amazing for that. So that's a little model of a way it could be installed. We don't have to worry about that though, because they come on site and they install it for us. So that's a great thing.
So looking at that kind of roadmap there you see, and then the next slide tells you exactly what we are going to get if we are able to purchase the PACE program. They provide everything we need, every material, every saw, every hammer, every screw, nut, bolt, everything that we need. They provide that. Not only do they provide the materials, as Tara said, they help come set it up. They train our staff on how to utilize this program, which is very important. It will train teachers. It will train the paras who are going to be working side by side with those students. So it's very important that they know how to run the program as well. It does also cover the traveling expenses, obviously, for the team that comes in. It also gives us the opportunity to contact them if we still have questions or if something's not working out or we feel we're missing something. It will allow us for a year to be able to continue asking questions and have them come in and assist us. So as you see, it gives the shelving units, the workbenches, everything that we need to go forward with the program.
So just a couple more slides, slide down. Yeah, we thought this really fit into our mission, our engage, empower, inspire. So this system we feel like is really going to engage our most significant needs, students with our most significant needs, in identifying and exploring their career interests. We also feel like it's going to empower our students to learn the skills to obtain that post-secondary employment. That's what we want them to be able to do, that independent employment. And then also inspiring our students to build on and improving their level of independence. So we do have a little snippet of a video here, and I know that Casey has gotten it ready for us. So what you're going to see, it's going to talk about the 3 different types of embedded assessment, and then there's going to be some pictures of how it is set up in different classrooms across the country.
Unlike other tests, PACE provides 3 types of assessment in one. First, PACE is an authentic assessment. The PACE lab is set up to mimic typical community-based job settings. It tests using skills found in those settings, and it occurs in a context where these skills are typically required. Students, acting like employees, perform jobs like wiring circuits, fitting pipes, making change, measuring ingredients, and sorting mail. Second, PACE is an embedded assessment, where assessment and instruction are indistinguishable, allowing the assessment to occur unobtrusively. When students are not aware that they're being assessed, they can focus entirely on the job in front of them and more fully show the supervisor what they're really capable of. Third, PACE is a formative assessment. It allows supervisors to interact with PACE employees, identify immediate instructional needs, and adjust instruction accordingly. The PACE assessment adapts to the needs of the employee, making it ideal for students with special needs.
All right, so that was a 10-minute video, so we just showed a little snippet there, so you're welcome. Our final slide there would just be our request for your approval, for the board's approval of that investment of $36,530.60 out of our ESSER II special education funds in order to install this system at Emporia High School and to provide that training for all of the staff members. And what questions might you have? We'll do our best to answer them.
What questions do we have this evening? Well, I think this sounds really, really cool. I have a nephew with autism, and I'm excited for him to be at the high school next year, and I could see this being really beneficial for him. But then I also wondered, what about kids who maybe don't have an IEP, but have like ADHD and really struggle with time management? Is there any way for them to, because you have a set amount of tasks you have to finish in a certain amount of time, which can be a real challenge for some of those kids. I just didn't know if that was ever something, or is it just so much part of your school day that it's not like you could bring in other kids ever?
I think that's a valid question, and it might be one that we have to figure out as that's installed and just see what it's like. Because like I said earlier, somebody thought that PACE was a good idea sometime down the road because we have some pieces of it already. We just don't have the whole system still. So I think that's probably a question that we will need to look at as we install that, as we see how that fits into our day, and as we see how our teachers utilize it. So I don't think it is just for our students with IEPs, but it does say students with disabilities. And you know as well as I do that we have students that have different diagnoses who are walking around who don't have that need for special education services. So perhaps it could be something that would be appropriate for them as well.
I was
have
just
to-
thinking of my
yeah,
other
we'll just
nephew
have to see.
who
Yeah.
really struggles with time management.
Right.
Yes. I also wondered, so the products or, the things that you create and move around and sell,
Right.
is there any way that could be integrated with like the Circle of Friends group or the groups, the classes that produce things?
Right.
Could they package those items in
Right.
just, to integrate so that everybody's working together?
Right. And I think that is very doable. I think the students would need the time to
Absolutely.
work through the process
Sure.
first. But I think once they get comfortable with the hammer, the nail, the saw, those types of things, absolutely.
Ready for
I
a new
think that would
challenge,
be
yeah.
a fantastic
Cool.
idea for those groups to work together. Yeah.
Cool.
And then, maybe that's money that goes into replenish supplies for the program or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, for everything that we get, it does
Yeah.
seem very affordable. So I'll just make that little plug for whoever else has a question now.
And I think just to reinforce, I think it's a one-time cost. I mean, there's not a yearly
Correct.
fee like for some of our things that we have to.
Right.
Pay
Aside from
for.
replenishing materials, there's a one-time charge.
Okay, great.
I have a question. I'm completely in support of this. Working at the Department for Aging and Disability Services now, I've been able to see kind of from a top-down structure some of the what I would call service gaps for certain communities. For instance, you can be 18 and graduate high school, but that doesn't mean you're totally mature. It doesn't mean you're really ready to go quote unquote adult, as we might say. So I think this is a great service to offer for some of those folks who need it. My question though is, what would the amount of classroom time and instruction look like for someone who's a part of the PACE program? What does that schedule in a week look like? How often are they in the room? How is that structured? I'm curious what that looks like in action.
So that is, obviously, we're going to be looking at individual student IEPs to determine what that need looks like. So it would be difficult for me to say, well, everybody's going to be in the lab for this amount of time, because we're going to make that schedule on an individual basis. And without having installed the lab before, it is difficult to determine what that might look like, but we would want as many students as possible to have the opportunity to come in and use the lab. I'm a little green here. The person who has the most experience with those tools within part of the lab would be Michelle. So any thoughts on that, Michelle?
we typically ran it just like a school schedule. So through the block process. Each block, when I did it last year, before I moved to the transitions program, each block was a different group of students. So I could run easily 3 or 4 different groups through the course of the day and through what we had for the PACE program last year. So, and with it running, I'm not as familiar with the schedule this year since I'm not actually in the high school, but I think you could easily, every block, have a different set of students in there working on the PACE program. So, yeah.
And that kind of brings me to just another question. I'm curious, for that 18 to 21-year-old population, how does the transportation work for them if they have struggles or issues being able to get to wherever the classroom is? If there's students who don't have the ability to drive or they don't have transportation, does that make sense?
It does. So we have different scenarios that we look at for our 18 to 21s. I talked about the transitions program, which we have all students from all of our cooperative member districts utilizing that program. And obviously their transportation is from their local district. We have a group of students who are 18 to 21 who might not be appropriate for the transitions program in that it won't meet their needs. So they have been receiving instruction within the school still as part of that 18 to 21 program. So we would be implementing the PACE system with them while they were still in the school. Now, if they wanted to come on part-time, we would work to see what their need was for transportation and ensure that that need would be met, because we do have that responsibility to them from until they're 21. Yep, absolutely.
Any more questions on this topic? If not, it is an action item. Don't fall all over yourselves.
Madam President, I move to approve the purchase of the PACE Practical Assessment Exploration System out of ESSER 2 Special Education Funds to be installed at Emporia High School as submitted.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, excellent presentation, ladies. Thank you. Item 6B, 2022-2023, Timmerman Elementary School Improvement Update.
Mrs. Lori Curzon, principal of Timmerman Elementary, is going to lead this presentation, and then you can just introduce everyone. How about that?
Good evening. I'm Lori Curzon, principal at Timmerman Elementary. I have my accreditation team, and we have Becky Hink, who is the accreditation chair, Hayden Trujillo, and she is kind of our math committee chair, Hannah Anderson, and Megan Day is our SEL chair.
Okay, so this first picture is a picture of our building-wide scoreboard, and we have it in our main hallway where all stakeholders can see it, from students to teachers to anybody, parents that come into our building and see it. With the math, there is not a score for kindergarten and first grade because we're using FastBridge assessments, but we want them to be aware that what they're doing in the classroom affects what happens as well for the building score. And then I'll kind of go over our literacy goal. So our goal for literacy this year is by May 2023, Timmerman Elementary School will increase the number of students scoring at or above the 30th percentile by 4% on the spring A reading assessment. And this is a couple pictures of some students using one of our strategies of MERP. Our strategies that we chose to help support our literacy goal is targeted small group instruction that connects the past, the phonics skills, and decoding skills to enable students to manipulate words, read fluently, and comprehend instructional level text. That's typically done during our literacy flex time. Another strategy we adopted was the MERP, and what that is monitored independent reading practice. I just think of it as like DEER when we were kids, like drop everything and read. It's to help build vocabulary, fluency, increase students' desire of love and reading. And I'll say that
My team, second grade, we jumped in and kids started doing it right away during our flex block. And almost daily, I have a student come up to me and say, I'm at too good of a part. Can I please do it for my next station? And it's pretty cool to see them not want to put the book down. Today, even walking down the hallway, I heard another teacher say, you need to put that away. You're going to trip. And I looked and he had his book out still from flex trying to go to lunch. I didn't even know he had it with him still, but it's pretty awesome to see that that's carrying over and really getting them excited for it. And then our last strategy we're focused on is transfer to text. It gives students the opportunity to practice their phonics skills in a text that is aligned to a certain skill.
Okay, so I'm going to speak a little bit about our math goal. And it states by May 2023, Timmerman Elementary School will increase the number of students scoring at or above the 30th percentile by 4% on the spring A math assessment. So this goal kind of came from when the math committee sat down and we looked across the board at our data. We saw that we had the lowest amount of students in that high risk category. And we also had around 15 to 40% in the no risk or low risk category. It was that some risk category that we really wanted to focus on. Fastbridge actually states that to be some risk, you're scoring at the 15th through the 39th percentile. So the 30th percentile seemed like a really great place to start. Okay, so a couple of strategies that we have chosen to implement to support that math goal. The first one is implementation and professional development through new math resource. It's Envision Mathematics in grades K through 5. I'm so short of breath. I am sorry. So anyway, that new curriculum that we started this year, we have had 2 opportunities to have professional development and we just dove right in with the implementation. We had district PLC today, and I know 5th grade is really looking forward to even vertically aligning. There have been some things that, that they were expected to know in 5th grade that they didn't know how to do. So we're like, oh, we're really excited though, knowing that 4th grade is covering those things, and hopefully we can clean some of that up. The next thing is targeted small group instruction during math workshop. And that's what you see there in those pictures. Those are 2nd graders working on some measurement activities. So again, just really targeting that some risk group to hopefully get them up into the no risk or low risk category.
So our strategic plan for social emotional learning, or SEL, is by April of the 2023-2024 school year, our student behavior reports will decrease by 15% compared to our baseline of this school year. So we're obviously still collecting that data and looking at what that looks like with our new behavior reports. So, and then go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Hello. So some of our strategies that we are currently using and we will continue to increase and work on throughout next year to reach our goal is having our second step teachers having second step taught by our classroom teachers. This is at Timmerman, this is their first year of teaching those lessons. So the kids are getting it directly from their teacher, and that helps them follow through the rest of the week. We also this year built into our schedule have 20 minutes every day of SEL time. Teachers can use this time to teach their second step lessons, to have class meetings, to do team building. And as SSSs, we are having tier 2 small groups with students who qualify as tier 2. And we're also working one-on-one with students who are tier 3.
You guys have approved the Capturing Kids' Heart refresher, so thank you for that. We are going to just kind of like reimagine that next year and implement that in the school and continue to grow onto that. And then another thing this year, and you can go ahead and move to the next slide. It has pictures of our calm corners. This is the ones on the left, are a 4th grade classroom, a new teacher this year, and that's her calm corner. It's used if students need a break in the classroom to just kind of regulate, take a moment, and there can be like different breathing exercises, some fidgets. Some even have like paper where they can write what they're feeling. And then over on the right, we have take a break boxes. This could be used in a calm corner, but some kids have them in their locker or with their teacher, so they can just grab that, head out to the hall, take a break. They're more mobile too, so that's nice. And I think that we will be purchasing those and having teachers create those next year so that there's like 1 or 2 per classroom. So that'll be really good to see that being used.
Okay, so moving forward, we're going to continue to focus on math workshop, the format, the resources that we have with math. In math and literacy, we're going to go back to the PSYOP that we had many years ago, refresher and get some training, which will help with the overall student achievement, academic content and language skills, and to prepare them for college and career ready. With SEL, as Hannah mentioned, we're going to have that CKH refresher in August PLT, and just moving forward and researching the restorative practice and school-wide behavior to help us with that. And then the last thing is we have the scoreboard in the hallway, but we would like to get those embedded into each of the classrooms. So we'll be focusing on that for the 2023-24 school year. What questions might you have?
Any questions? I will tell you that I rarely ever got in trouble in school. Imagine that. But I did get in trouble in 5th grade for reading my book under my desk because I did not want to put it down. So I love that kids don't want to put their books down. I think that's really, really great. Yeah. Sounds like you're all doing a really wonderful job.
I did have a question, just the transfer to text. Could you maybe explain that just a little bit more? Because
Absolutely. So transfer to text would be like if we're working on a short A sound, they would find that in isolation and like a text or with words and just read those words. And then they would read those in a text. So they would highlight, focusing on the skill, and then get a text like I spy them, highlight them, and then they would read those. So it's kind of a format that's set up on a weekly basis for that gradual release.
okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I have 2 questions about your social emotional goal. The first one is, how are you tracking student behavior reports? And then I was also wondering, what sort of behaviors do you find that students are presenting with the most frequently?
Okay, I'm going to call up my SSSs.
Okay, so to answer the behavior reports and like how we collect that, we have a log. If teachers need us, they call the office, and that kind of goes out to like our support team, and then we can respond to that. So there's like an office call log. And we also have teachers submitting a behavior report, which is the student support specialists got together this summer, and we created that and implemented that as a way for like everybody across the district in our school to be able to get that information.
For your second question, what kinds of behaviors we see a wide variety from, we have a lot of students who have more externalized concerns like anxiety. We have students who need breaks in their day. They're not able to stay regulated for a long period of time. We have a few students who have more external, and that can look like students who need to really be pulled one-on-one. There sometimes can be eloping or aggression. I think we have a little bit of everything.
Any other questions?
I have a question. It's kind of a follow-up to Lillian's. I'm a huge fan of restorative practice. Could you kind of give me some examples of what that might look like in an elementary school setting?
We're so excited.
We
that they are.
really,
They're so
we really
excited.
love restorative practices too. One example that and I'll let Hannah jump into. One example that I'm really a big fan of is using think sheets for students, because we are doing a little bit more discipline this year. We have different levels of think sheets, and that is something that we can work on with students. A think sheet asks questions like, how are you feeling before this choice happened. How did your choice hurt other people? How did your choice hurt you? So things like I lost a privilege, or I hurt somebody, or I'm not having fun, or I feel worse. And then it walks students through things that they could do to make it better, like apologizing or cleaning up a mess or checking on somebody. It also has questions about what they could do differently next time. So walking through those think sheets is restorative. It helps them to really think about what happened and how they were feeling and how that has affected them, but also their community or their peer. And it gives them some guidance for what they could do differently next time. And that's not something that they have to do alone. Like, an adult is there to walk them through that and give them that support and reflection. That's one example.
I was just going to mention too that we have an SEL committee. And so we have ordered books different. There's 3 different titles so that they can have their book study as a team. And then they will collaborate on that and then work with the whole staff on restorative practices next year.
Anything else? Okay, great job.
Thank you
Thanks
for your
very much
time.
for being here tonight. Thank you. Item 7A, construction update from McCown Gordon.
Mr. Eric Wolsey, McCown Gordon, Senior Project Manager, is here for his monthly update.
Good evening. We'll start off with the schedule. Just kind of a brief overview. Middle school and Village Elementary are tracking very well. Timmerman and Riverside, the plan is we will still mobilize middle of May so that we're ready to go and start the classroom renovations at both those schools when school is done in May. And then William Allen White is kind of a tentative schedule, talking with HGK today, still working through some programming meetings. The hope is once we get everything finalized and some decisions are made here, probably sometime in May and June, that design will be 4 to 6 months for that. So kind of maybe a best case scenario, we would see something towards the end of the year, first part of next year. So tracking right now kind of what that timeline's showing, but just know that's out there, and procurement of materials too will also be a big driver of that schedule. So, right, Emporia Middle School, a lot of good things happening there, and it looks completely different from these pictures that I sent in for this update a week ago. So on the left side, that's just kind of an exterior shot of the new science wing, just showing all the brick is done. The EFIS, which is the upper portion above the windows and brick, is complete pretty much on all the additions. That right picture is actually one of the new science rooms, and the flooring is actually all complete. So epoxy floors in all the science labs looks really sharp. And where you see all those miscellaneous pipes and penetration sticking up, that's a lab table. So you have, I almost say 5 to 6 lab tables in the lab areas. So those are all installed now. They have, it'll be nice because it's kind of a dual purpose table at that lab area that you can raise it and lower it. So if kids need to be standing up, they can stand up, or if you need to be sitting down, they can be sitting down. So really turning out nice. And we've actually, this week, we're getting a load of flooring, so carpet and LVT to start installation in that science wing as well. So things are really moving along there. For the most part, all the casework is done. We're waiting on some miscellaneous decorative wall panels kind of throughout the admin area and the new commons area that'll tie with the admin in both gymnasiums. So Casey, if you want to scroll down, there we go. So picture on the left is the new gymnasium, which will also serve as the storm shelter. So as you can see there, all the sound panels on the walls, the tectum panels, are painted gray, red, and black, and it looks really nice in there. The colors really pop in there. And then the walls, you can see all the white is actually going through and patching prior to paint. So actually that has all been painted now with first coat. So all that patching has been covered up. And then all the gym equipment, with the exception of the curtain, the divider curtain, has now been installed as well. I can't remember if I talked about this last month, but on the very top of that picture where the gym equipment attaches, you can kind of see that white it looks kind of like a fuzzy material. So it's actually an acoustical sound insulation that is sprayed up there and sticks to that precast to help just with all the sound that will be bouncing around in there, since it is a concrete structure. And then on the right side is just a quick picture of all the epoxy and the new large restrooms out in that commons area that will serve both gymnasiums when you have big sporting events or plays in the gyms as well. So lots of things happening there at the middle school. And then at Village Elementary. So actually we are looking to hopefully do a punch list sometime next week of the new administration addition and remodel. What you're looking at there is kind of the new entry. On the left-hand side is where that door is at, covered in cardboard to protect it. That'll be kind of the new main entry to come into the office space. So it'll be a secure entry. You'll come in there. There'll be some chairs there, and then the picture on the right is kind of your view as you walk through that door of the new reception area coming in there. So, and then these are just some shots outside. So as you can see on the right-hand side is sidewalks were being poured at the parking area. Majority of the sidewalks are all complete now. And then the picture on the left is just the new trash enclosure. The new brick is complete. And actually the drive for the trash truck to get up in there has all been done as well. Working on cleaning up that parking lot, and we've got to get the landscaper in next week is what we're shooting for, to kind of dress up all the topsoil and then put some seed down. And then once they're out of the way, we'll clean up the parking lot again and then stripe it. And then hopefully close to the end of the month, sometime in May, hopefully be able to turn that over, because I know parking is like gold over there. So, and then the next picture is just on the right is just kind of another picture of that new admin area. So a lot has happened. Actually, all the flooring's done, ceiling tiles are installed, all that protection off of that reception desk has been removed for the punch list next week. And then that picture on the left is actually the old multi-purpose room, if you can picture that. So it's pretty much all the framing for the new media center is complete. We're waiting on back in the far corner, we're cutting 2 new windows for natural daylight. So the mason contractor was finishing up toothing in the brick today on the outside and finished up CMU, I think, yesterday or a couple of days ago. So they'll carry the rest of that furring around. And then drywall was being stocked in that area. So drywall should start shortly, hopefully next week sometime, once all the rough-in's complete. And yeah, a lot of great things happen. Both projects are tracking on schedule currently. So any questions before I jump into, I guess we touched about Riverside and Timmerman. So still, like I said, mid-May, when school's out, we're going to start the remodel of both classrooms in both of those schools. And then William Allen White, the programming has started. And I know one of these meetings will bring back some floor plans to share with you all on kind of what has been decided here, probably guessing maybe sometime in June. So. But any questions?
I did have a question. I know at the middle school, it's our second gym, but how much bleacher seating is planned for that, or is there?
Yes, so there is bleachers.
Okay.
I do not have that exact number
Well,
off
and
the top of my
that's
head,
fine.
but I will get that to Dr. Harder and she can share that. But you'll have bleachers on 2 sides. So
Both, okay.
both, yep. So with the volleyball nets, though, you'll only really be able to have, I think, one side of the bleachers out, just because of how those courts laid out. So, but you do have bleachers in that new gymnasium.
And it's regulation size, but I mean.
Correct. Yep. You'll be able to have a regulation size basketball game in there.
Okay.
I think there are actually 6 basketball goals that all fold down. So, for practices, you'll be able to have those all down. There's 2 fold down volleyball nets. And then there will be a main competition volleyball court as well, if I believe. I maybe get my projects mixed up, but to where you can have just the regular standards so that you can hold a single match if you need to. So you bet.
I do want to add, there was a lot of discussion about bleachers and how to add more seating. So that's been, it was a really good discussion. So we had some good advocacy from that middle school.
And then the other thing that I'm not sure if we shared is the bleachers in the existing gym are also going to be replaced as well. So those will be new bleachers in there too.
Anything else?
any other
Anything from
questions?
BFEC? I don't know if you guys met recently. No?
No.
Okay. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, travel safely.
Thank you.
Item 7B, bids for village elementary furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Dr. David McGehee, Interim Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations, has the next two items on bids.
We all struggle getting that whole title out sometimes. Well, Miss Seeley was talking about the item earlier, pays being something that wasn't as expensive as all the other things that end up being brought to the board. I thought you were referring directly to the things that I'm doing. Yeah, Eric's crew puts these spaces together and gets them ready for us, and then we have to come back through and figure out how are we going to furnish them. And so the next couple of items, this first one, the FF&E for a village. You should know, and you're probably aware that staff is involved in assisting in selecting finishes and chairs and desks and things like that we put in these spaces. So we definitely involve staff in that. We had 4 bids for Village Elementary, and while the bids, if you look at those bids compared to our budget, they're a little more than budget, but we've already identified places that we've bid and received proposals for where we save money that will cover the differences. So you shouldn't be concerned about the budget, and we are recommending the low bidder Modern Business Interiors at $103,468.46.
Jamie, didn't you want to know? Aren't we allowed to, as long as it's within 5%, or is it 1%? To choose the local bidder? I'm sorry, we should have asked that prior to this meeting, but didn't think about it till tonight.
Yeah, we were just curious because, of course, our preference is always to go with the local companies. And so we had just talked quickly before the board meeting about the price difference between MBI and Navrats. And it's about a $5,000 difference, give or take. And so we were wondering what I was wondering what our board policy was on what's the ceiling on when we could go with the local. And I think it's 1%, which would preclude us from choosing this.
Yeah, if it's 1%, no.
Right.
If it's 5%, yes.
And we are recommending Navrats for the second.
Right, we are for the second one. Yep.
We were
Which is
sensitive
bigger.
to the fact that they are local. But the Navrats bids often, they're favorable because typically they're not as much for like delivery, installation, and so on. So they are typically favorable, but
well,
we're recommending the low bidder.
Okay.
Casey, did you get some clarification on our policy?
Yeah, it is 1%.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank
then-
you so much.
Well, that settles it then.
That settles it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Does anyone have any questions for Dr. McGehee tonight?
I would motion to accept the bid from Modern Business Interiors as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Or I haven't become familiar with all the policies.
Motion passes 7-0.
I'm still having to use my GPS to get to the schools.
Motion passes 7-0.
And you can just stay right there for item 7C, bids for Emporium Middle School furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Yep, same situation for the middle school. We received 5 bids for this package. These bids are within budget, well within the budget amount, and we're recommending Navrats, which is the low bidder at $160,131.50.
And seeing as how the next closest bid was on, I think, $23,000 or so more, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to accept the bid from Navrats for Emporium Middle School furniture, fixtures, and equipment as submitted.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, item 7D, Safe Defend presentation.
Mr. Jared Giffen, Director of Human Resources, is going to introduce our speaker or guest speaker and then our next several agenda items.
Good evening. I've been talking to Dan since January when we met at the Safe and Secures School Conferences. I just wanted to prelude everything with, this isn't a reaction to the things that happened a couple of weeks ago. We've actually been talking about this presentation for a few months now. So just glad Dan is here to be able to share a little bit about his product as we continue to explore a variety of ways to help keep our students and staff safe in our schools. So welcome to Dan Cole from Safe Defend.
Timer on here so we know where we're at. Dr. Harder, thank you for inviting me in, and thank you, board, for allowing me to speak with you tonight. A little bit about Safe Defend first off. I just wanted to, safety in the schools is such a unique challenge. Most of the layers that schools have in place help you manage your day-to-day incidents. Those incidents that usually don't become emergencies. So what Safe Defend does is make sure when you do have an extreme emergency, a crisis event, that we help you manage those at a much more efficient manner. So everybody on campus is safer, the chaos is controlled faster, and your law enforcement groups are more in tune with your administration and the emergency at hand. So I'm going to walk you through a presentation. As you can see here on my slide, I'm a fire rescue guy, so this is going to be giving you a drink with a fire hose. Just to let you know, the Safe Defend team has educators, law enforcement officials, fire rescue, business personnel, and engineers. So we all come with a different skill set, but it's all focused on helping the school's crisis management plan. What we've done is we have put together a concept that is left or right of bang. So bang refers to any act of violence, a direct attack, or a crisis event. That's when things are unfolding and you need that immediate assistance. Left of bang are our proactive actions, steps that we can help you prevent these crises from taking place through training and through some tools to help you identify potential behavior issues, connecting the right dots so you can get certain people on the path to better behavior before these fatal grievances come to light. Right of bang is where I really specialize. I'm part of the team that helps take care of the equipment for the Safe Defend, that when the incident takes place, we want to make sure within that first 15 seconds, your staff have the tools it takes to get everybody where they need to be in a safe place and get your law enforcement and your safety teams where they need to be to respond more effectively. That's just a real simple graphic to let you know bang is the incident, left is everything that is proactive, and right, it does include alerting everybody and notifying authorities. We're very fortunate that Dr. Gregory Vecchi is on board with us. He came on board in January, and he specializes in helping schools with their risk assessment, crisis management teams before an incident takes place. So he works with your admin teams, your law enforcement groups, and your counseling teams, like I said, to connect the right dots on behaviors and help develop some plans to get folks on a better path. With this part of our training, it has really been a big difference maker to our partner schools. I need to share with you a little bit about what Safe Defend is and what we aren't. A lot of people get us confused with these multifunction Bluetooth or wireless apps. Well, that's not us. We're not a software program with an emergency function added to it. What we've done is we've made sure that we are more comparable to the hardwired fire emergency systems. Those systems also have fire extinguishers. So when you consider what we are, we're a purpose-built harm mitigation system for managing targeted violence, weapon-related attacks, and even weather-related emergencies, the way our safety boxes work. So understanding extreme violence and dangerous gaps in the emergency response process, this is really important. And I want this to be thought-provoking. And maybe if you have questions after I present this, you can throw them at me, but right off the bat, not all violence in the schools is extreme violence. Just understand majority of these can be de-escalated with good training, and your staff do an excellent job of de-escalating. But when we're talking about active shooter statistics, this is 2019, less than 20% of the attackers were engaged by law enforcement. That means 80% of these attacks were over before law enforcement could arrive, and school staff were obligated to confront the offender without support. You'd be surprised to find out that in that 20%, a large number of those, law enforcement was able to engage the attacker because they were part of the initial attack or they were already on the school, meaning they were the safety teams and law enforcement officers present on campus. All I want to do is share with you that it's not only a gun issue. We have to be understanding that if a gun isn't available, if evil's in the heart of somebody, they will find a weapon. So let's pay attention to what we have and understand what the threats are and how we can help defend against them. Emergency response timelines. This is really important. I'm sure you're all aware that most of the time when somebody calls 911, the emergency has been taking place for maybe 2, 3, 5 minutes. Response timelines that we have that are documented are when the dispatcher actually dispatches law enforcement officers. This is a national average. Here's the challenge though. Majority of these incidents are over in 5 minutes or less. And if somebody's using a firearm, they target a victim every 15 seconds until they run out of ammunition, leave the building, or they take their own life. Or somebody steps in and confronts them and takes them out for you. That all happens within 3 minutes. What we know, here's some facts that we've brought together to really help you put this in perspective. When your perimeter security fails, the threat's in the building. Emergency response timelines must be improved. Multi-stage communication systems continue to fail. And our staff that are trained to an ALICE or equivalent run, hide, fight standard, they're asking for options to support a planned emergency response. Now, I talked about it earlier, but 94% of these attackers are people that have access to our school because we know them. They're either current or former students, they're associated with the students or staff, and 6% are outsiders like what you just saw down in Nashville. So knowing that 94% of these folks know how to get into the building, it really makes us question the layers of safety we have in place and what could be the most effective layer once they're inside the building. So from where you sit, what is an acceptable emergency response timeline? That means from when somebody has eyes on an imminent threat, what's an acceptable timeline to get your security team, your officers that are on campus to the right location on campus, and their support team outside of the school to back them up. If it's anything less than 30 seconds, we really need to help you refocus that. That goal really needs to be very close to the time somebody lays eyes on an imminent threat. On this multi-stage communication system, the true fact is human element under stress magnifies multi-stage system failures. We get an adrenaline dump. We're not trained to handle crises like that, like our friends in law enforcement. They're trained to handle it. They understand the sounds, the violence. We're not. We're staff, we're teachers, you know. What we want to do is make sure that schools that are relying on multi-stage systems understand those systems are good for their day-to-day management, but it's not the imminent crisis response activator. So think about that as we go through here. And this is one more thought-provoking piece on this. Staff are provided access to fire extinguishers and AEDs. All staff understand how to use a fire extinguisher, and most staff understand that an AED is easily operated and they've been through that training. We have a lot of folks now asking us if we're providing harm mitigation tools for those two emergencies, what can we provide to help with staff with extreme violence? I'm going to walk you through this real quick. Emergency communication systems aren't all the same, and what should you know? Well, I'll tell you what we do and what separates us. So Safe Defend provides a reliable, secure activation source for initiating the school's emergency response plan. So reliable and secure means that this system is programmed for your staff, your substitutes, your paras, your facilities team, but it will not respond to people off the street or students. So you don't have the problem with false alarms or accidental activations. So when this system is utilized, everybody understands what it's for, and they need to get the system activated, and it's not a false alarm. Single stage activation simply means one action gets everything in motion. So what you need to understand is there is an alert that needs to take place. That's everybody on campus needs to be aware of the threat so they can seek safety. And we need to push out a notification to your law enforcement, administration team district-wide, and that 911 call needs to be made. So that notification component is critical. This is a sample of what a smartphone screen looks like when we do a push-out alert. And I just dropped that in there to let you see how simple that is and what the information would be. So somebody places their finger on one of our devices, and that device registers that location, sends out an emergency text and an email, and a live person calls 911 with that same information. So using Safe Defend in an emergency, when staff members recognize imminent danger, they place their finger on one of our devices. When it activates, all the devices indicate alarm status. That campus-wide alert system will sound for 2 minutes, and that's very intentional. We want it to go silent after everybody's aware of the danger. And when it goes silent, then everybody can hear actionable intelligence, and they can move towards the incident, and they're not trying to create a plan and work over the sounds of horns and strobes. Notifications, like I said, they're going out to everybody that needs to be a part of the response team, and also staff on campus. If they have the opportunity to see where this incident's taking place and they're clear over on the other side of campus, their stress level goes from up here down to here because they trust that it's going to be taken care of very quickly, and they're going to lock their door and they're going to be in a safe place. So just giving them that information changes the whole dynamic of the chaos factor. We're making that 911 call. I did have a piece here that you would be able to hear it, but it didn't translate over to the phone or the slide. But what it does is it just simply states Safe Defense system has been activated, law enforcement has been notified, lockdown is activated. So everybody gets to their safe place. Everybody understands this is a true lockdown situation. Just by activating that system, you can change the mental onset of somebody that had intent to do violence. If they haven't acted yet and they hear law enforcement's been notified and everybody's in lockdown, they may just go ahead and leave the building or lay their weapon down without ever being engaged. So it really is a beneficial piece just to have a system like this in play. This is a picture of your high school, and I did this just to help you understand, of course, how large that campus is. And the average 911 call that would come in would say, got an incident in Emporia High School. They might be on the phone for upwards of a minute, minute and a half, trying to give good information so the dispatcher can give our law enforcement folks good details so they know where to go. If our system's activated, it improves response times by 3 to 5 minutes simply because the device lets them know exactly where the situation unfolded. So I chose to say room 201, health class, door number 8, northeast section. So in my mind, if we had doors numbered and this was door number 8 back by the gyms, this is kind of where we would be. If I was a responding officer, I could come in and go straight to instead of coming in and going to the front. It's a huge benefit for our law enforcement friends when they're coming in from the outside. It's an even bigger benefit for our law enforcement friends in the building when we're talking seconds. So what are the components and what is involved in a Safe Defend protection package? Very simply, all of these projects are engineered according to your safety plan and your goals. South Lyon County put in a system in all 3 of their campuses that was considered to be a zone system. And we worked with the budget that they gave us, and they have the ability to get their campus in safe status and get law enforcement responding, and they have safety boxes available in certain zones. Some schools put a safety box in every workspace like Mays. Mays is a little bigger in your district, but comparable. The system is server-based and they're power over Ethernet devices and they're all plug and play. So you can start with a zone system and add devices as you have budget. Or you can move these devices from building to building if you have an improvement project and you deactivate one wing of the building and you build another. We have 2 secure activation sources. We have activation modules that are standalone. They're usually for hallways, offices, and places where you wouldn't shelter in place. And the safety boxes or safety cabinets, they're in an area where you would shelter in place. These devices manage 2,000 binary files per campus, and they're remotely programmed. And we want to make sure that staff can interact with this system daily. This is an emergency system. Most staff that have had apps or radios or things of that nature to use, if they don't get to practice with them, they fail them when they're under stress. So we make sure we have a training station so all staff can interact with these in the staff workroom. We do have 2 pieces under development. A lot of schools are asking for a non-emergency assist button for the offices and areas where they might discreetly want to ask for assistance but don't want to pick a radio up or don't want to get on the intercom to call for admin team. And a lot of schools that are experiencing issues and needing Narcan and EpiPens and bleeding control accessible, but they don't want them in unlocked cabinets, our system can accommodate with this secure system. This is just a real quick couple pictures of what it looks like. That's a safety box by the door. We put these in areas where you would shelter in place, and they have the tools needed to help mitigate. And this is an activation module in the center of that desk for the secretary, the person watching the front door. And this is what one of them looks like in the hallway. Secondary schools, when staff are watching students at passing time, a lot of times staff in the area will just stand by one of these and can activate it if needed. And that's just what the training station looks like and how it responds. And in closing, I just want you to consider when you're looking for advanced safety solutions, I like to help schools calculate the totality of the problem against your goal. Again, we aren't that day-to-day management system that keeps everybody moving through your building, like your intercom, your radios, things like that. We're that imminent threat when extreme violence is present. We want to make sure you have control of that, and then everything else can be backed out from that initial incident. So what we do, one action initiates your complete emergency response. All your campus occupants are alerted of danger. Notification is taken care of. 911 call is placed. We're helping you isolate that threat and neutralize it more quickly. We're giving you a sense of control. And this is the biggest part. True harm mitigation action taken by school staff in the first 15 seconds will determine success or failure in the next 15 minutes. I went over by a few minutes, but I would like to make sure you have some opportunity to ask me some questions. It's a big drink, isn't it?
What questions do we have? Seen a lot of note taking.
I was wondering, does this product notify parents?
Now, we choose to leave the parents off the initial immediate response, but what it does do in our process of round top and training with the school admin team, we talk to them about how to have their public information officer immediately respond to parents in an appropriate way. Because when our system is activated, it doesn't mean you have a person with intent to kill on your campus. It means there's imminent danger. You might be able to control that in that first 30 seconds just by activating the system and separating everybody from danger. So if that's the case, in that first minute, minute and a half, you clear the alarm, you get on the intercom and you let staff know the incident is under control. Just go ahead and remain in your lockdown stat and we'll come release you. Then you can immediately communicate with parents and let them know you had an incident, safety defense system was activated and it's under control. So the faster all of that takes place, the better off your community feels about how prepared you were and the stress level comes down in the building.
Also, what's been the experience of like an armed attacker in a school that has safe defend?
Well, we like to say that this is also a deterrent. We have this in over 300 campuses in 10 states, and we have 20,000 staff that have access to these tools, and we've not had a weapon presented in any of our buildings. We have had the system deployed, and we feel very strongly that it was deployed early enough that it changed the psychology of the attacker. It does change the culture of safety on the campus when staff know that they have options and they know that everybody is a part of the safety network and can activate the system. They don't feel like they'll be caught by surprise. They understand if they have their door locked, children are in the safer corner, and they have options to protect the threshold of the door with our tools, just like they would if they needed a fire extinguisher or AED. It changes the culture of safety.
Yeah, those two words to me are key, and being a parent and being a member of this community. But I know a lot of parents and a lot of employees who feel like this would act as a deterrent. We hope that we never have to deploy it, but it could be a deterrent for kids who are, or anybody that's thinking of doing something and changing the culture. Nobody wants to be a sitting duck anywhere, not in a school, not in a hospital, not anywhere, courthouse, anywhere. And that's why those are protected already, you know. But we have a culture problem in terms of people not feeling protected, parents feeling insecure about their kids. And what happened a couple weeks ago just kind of brought that to the forefront. And thankfully, it ended okay for everyone, even for the boy, you know, but it could have ended much worse for him, and for everybody. And I think it was just eye-opening. And I do feel like I really want this to be something that we consider. I have one question, and I think I already know the answer.
Yeah.
This is much more common at the secondary level. Do you go into a few grade schools or?
Well, the districts we work with, we have it in all campuses district-wide and the district office. And it's simply because everybody needs to be trained at the same level, and your response team needs to be consistent in how they respond. And most often at the elementary preschool level, those incidents are not student on student. It's somebody that has an extreme challenge with a teacher or stalking a teacher, or it's something to do with emotional crimes, not necessarily walking in. But if you look at the number of crimes that have been inflicted against elementaries, they see those as softer targets. So having a system like this that says protected by Safe Defend, people understand how quickly the response system works, and your support team can be there within seconds instead of that long delay. It does change that culture also. Thank you.
On slide 9, you reference multi-stage communication systems continue to fail, and talking about the human element. Is that just folks don't call 911? What do you mean by multi-communication system
So
failure?
anytime a staff member has to get to an intercom and then call the front office, and that secretary or whoever's manning the intercom has to hear the message and then pick the phone up and dial 911, there can be a breakdown there, especially if the incident takes place in the office area and that's your command center, and those people can't access the phone, can't get word out, if they're tied up for 2, 3, 4 minutes working on this emergency, that's precious time. So multi-stage communication means anything that takes more than one step to get your good guys notified, get everybody on campus alerted so they can be behind that locked door, and 911 notified.
Dr. Harder, are our teachers and staff empowered to call 911 in an emergency situation without going through the office? And
Any staff member.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
any student, I mean, if there's an emergency, they're going to call 911.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm glad you brought that up because through the training process, it's important that all staff understand the board, the superintendent, the building principal is giving them the authority to put that building in a protective stance. When you empower them to do that, it changes their whole outlook on where they want to work. Do they want to go to a district that doesn't empower them? Or do they want to be here where they know you've empowered them to take that step, bring everybody underneath that safety umbrella?
I have another question. How many of the schools or districts that you've put this in for already also have metal detectors?
0.
Okay.
We've worked with a lot of schools. There is perceived safety and there's actual safety. Metal detectors, for the most part, are perceived safety because if somebody wants to bring a building in or a weapon into your building, they're going to figure it out. The metal detector, depending upon if you have a major event or if you have a dignitary or somebody, they're deterrents and it keeps people from bringing in things that they shouldn't have in. But schools and other areas like that, it's more of a challenge because your schools are open usually by 6:37 in the morning when people wouldn't be manning metal detectors, and they're open in the evening for activities. So it's really like a wiffle ball. It's a perceived safety with a lot of holes. Not saying that it doesn't have a purpose. It's just that it's more of a challenge and creates more of a feeling of insecurity among those that are in your buildings.
Does Safe Defend, obviously you work with schools, do you work with any other types of institutions? Or?
We do. Courthouses, we work with manufacturing facilities. Several manufacturing facilities have us on their production floors. We have hospitals. There's a tremendous amount of businesses. Anywhere where violence can occur, we can work with them. My specialty is schools, and that's where the system was actually designed for schools, but it has an application across spectrum.
I was wondering if most of the schools that you work with have the cabinets in all of their classrooms?
About 75% of the schools we work with do. Others that have law enforcement on campus feel very comfortable that as long as they have activation sources in zones, staff can activate when needed and that law enforcement officer can get there. So schools with a heavy presence of security, they don't necessarily see the need for it. But most schools that do partner with us start adding those to expand their network. If you were in the classroom and you could activate it from the safe side of the door, if something's going in the hallway, it's a much safer element for you. You lock the door, you activate the safety system, and you trust that good guys are going to come take care of the problem. In addition, we mentioned weather. So if you have noticed that you're going to take a direct hit from a dangerous weather event and you're going to evacuate the children to your tornado shelter, you can take the system off of alarm status and make the announcement, staff, we're going to go ahead and relocate to the tornado shelter. Safe Defend system is disarmed. Go ahead and open your safety cabinet and take your safety tools with you. Inside that, you'll have bleeding control with 2 different size tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, you have a flashlight, and a high visibility vest. So those are things that if you take a direct hit from a dangerous storm, you're a priority response for your EMS and fire. but it might be 10, 15 minutes before they can arrive. And if you have a lot of superficial injuries and bleeding and glass and things like that, it's a very important tools to have in that safety cabinet.
I have a few questions. I'm kind of with Jen. This is something I deeply want to look at.
Yeah.
And I think every time I see a school shooting now that I'm on a school board, it kind of affects you differently because you really kind of think and apply it to our school system. And what if those were my kids? What if that was my building? You said you had about 300 schools, and that, to the best of your knowledge, there's not been any sort of extreme violent event, which is good. I kind of look at safe defend as like insurance. Most of us will never get in a car accident, but if we do, you want to have insurance. With respect to how this operates, you mentioned earlier that there's like the button. You press the button and the system goes off. Is that button biometric, or can anyone press that button?
No, that's a very good question. So it's biometric in nature. It uses the minutia points from the fingerprint. We don't store the fingerprint, but we program all staff, both index fingers, and they can respond. Any of the devices will respond to them, and only those that we program in.
So in a hypothetical scenario where a kid sees the man with the rifle coming to the campus, he couldn't push the button. A teacher would have to do it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
With respect to what's in the boxes, the safety boxes, is there any mace, any sort of self-defense
do.
weapon?
So as I pointed out, and maybe I didn't clarify, we don't teach teachers to go in the hallway and take a bad guy on, but we do give them the tools to protect the threshold of the door. And knowing that almost 40% of these are edge weapons or blunt objects, a can of gel pepper spray can make an extreme difference when you're under direct attack. So we do provide the pepper spray as an option, and we train staff how to deploy it and what their window of opportunity would be. And we also have a window break on an expandable baton, and the window break is specifically for all of our windows in our newer construction schools are weather graded construction grade windows with 130 plus mile an hour wind resistant breakage. So it will take something bigger than a stapler or a chair if you needed to egress the building.
And I assume the baton can double as a melee weapon in close combat if that
We
happens.
teach staff how to protect the threshold of the door from the strong side. Should somebody put an arm through or reach in to unlock the door. So currently a lot of schools that have gone through some really good ALICE type training, they've suggested wasp spray or a souvenir bat or whatever you can put your hands on. But instead of those things that aren't approved, we're giving schools the opportunity to have approved items that staff have been trained on.
And for the people at home and here who don't know, can you define what the ALICE acronym is?
Alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evade.
And
evacuate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the safety boxes that have things like the mace in it, for instance. And you may have mentioned this earlier, but I was probably looking through the slides and it was an interactive thing. So if I'm asking you to repeat yourself, I apologize. How do those safety boxes stay secure? What's to stop a kid from getting in there and pulling out the mace or something?
Well, the beauty of this is none of those are lethal tools. Right. So even if somebody does break into the safety box, they really don't have anything that can do extreme damage. And because they are monitored, if somebody does open one, the admin team will be notified that a box has been opened. It will never set the alarm off unless they have the fingerprint, but they are secure. And the 10 years we've had our boxes out there, we've never had any of them broken into. It's interesting. It's like they don't break into the AEDs and these things. There's something about the safety device.
Right. And you talked about the training. And so I'm thinking about some of our teachers and kind of imagining that they're in this extreme violent situation and they've got the mace, they've got the baton, and maybe they're in a position where they actually are going to be physically confronted. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that training would look like for our staff? Because I'm thinking we've got staff that are maybe younger and more physically fit, and we've also got staff that are much older and maybe not as mobile. And I'm curious what that training would look like for them.
So the training is very informative, and the first hour is more of a lecture type training, scenario based, and then we allow staff to go out and deploy a can of pepper spray so they know what it feels like, and extend the baton so they know what it feels like. and how to use the window brake. It's very non-aggressive, and it's more of a walkthrough than anything. And again, we tell them these are in the safety box, but you're by no means obligated to use them. The most powerful thing for them is the bleeding control. We have 2 different size tourniquets in there with the hemostatic gauze. So most people that get shot or stabbed don't die from the trauma, it's the blood loss, and staff know that. Anybody that is in a building that's a crime scene, often you can't get your EMS in for upwards of maybe 15 to 30 minutes, depending upon how they train. So if your staff have the ability to make a difference in their life or the life of a few students, that to them is probably the most valuable tool in the toolbox.
And with respect to the training, is that training, is there a package to offer it annually?
Yes.
Because I'm thinking in terms of staff flowing in and out every year, we have people who move about.
So we feel very strongly that we get the chance to work with your staff annually. Now, there's 2 ways to do that. You can have a contract with my team to come out annually as part of our support package, or we can give your admin team or your law enforcement team our curriculum and they can train it. If you'd like to have us do it, we can come out and annually, like second year out, I think it's, don't quote me on this, like $750 per session. So if you've got 100 staff in there, it's not a lot.
And that kind of brings me, I guess, the big ticket question. What's the cost?
The cost to put our system in is according to your plan or your facilities team. So the server goes in and it programs for the district. That's about a $10,000 package. And then to put in the communication system that works with your intercom integration and all the tools it takes, that's about an $8,000 to $10,000 per campus. From there, you just start adding safety boxes or the activation modules based on your safety goals. And those are priced out at about what a laptop or a Chromebook would be. So pretty easy
Which is,
to go in with the
which in your interpretation is how much?
about $1,000 for
Okay.
a safety box and about $550 for one of the activation modules.
Okay. And about how many classrooms do we have? 600? Okay.
The answer to that question was 400 to 500, just because he wasn't at the mic, so people at home can hear.
Oh, okay. What else did I want to ask you? Not hackable.
Right.
Okay. We're talking about the biometrics. That's why I'm moving my
So
finger.
I will
Yeah.
tell you on the biometrics, it has a security level from 0 to 10. And we have found that, let's say 40 is the sweet spot, meaning nobody can access it unless they're programmed in. But what that does do is maybe 2 to 3 people out of 100 don't have the biometric material needed to activate that security level. But what we can do is adjust that security level per classroom or per wherever theirs is at. And we give them a second secure device like a tag or something that they have to break and then open the device, activate it. So there are ways that we've worked over the last 10 years to, I wouldn't say perfect it, but make it a lot more user-friendly and give access to all staff.
Is that for like subs? I'm thinking of substitute teachers who might be in those
We do
situations.
program subs in, and they can be pushed out to all devices district-wide because usually you have a rotation of subs that you know that you're going to have for that semester. And the enrollment process can be handled at the district office through your HR team when they're onboarding people. It takes about 2 minutes, scan them, and they click a box, and it sends them out to those locations.
And if you're associated with a building, is your biometric only associated with that building, or could you activate it in any building?
It's the choice of the admin. So if you're on 3 campuses, you can be pushed out to all 3 campuses. If you're on all campuses, you can be pushed out. So these devices store 2,000 binary files. So 1,000 people per campus can be entered.
Okay.
So I don't know how many staff are district-wide, but I would
Around
consider,
1,000. Yeah, we have around 1,000.
What sort of tech support, for lack of a better word, I guess I would say tech insurance, is this system, because you're talking about a server, Have you ever had to deal with issues of like ransomware getting into your product and shutting it down?
We have not had to deal with that, but we do have a very robust, secure system. And we're always working with our schools to whatever level of security they're at, we make sure we're at. And I mentioned earlier to your director of tech that our servers can be housed on your cloud or on your internal system, which is protected by you and us.
You mean an intranet, not an internet?
Right.
Okay.
Right. We also want to make sure that this is not a system that's dumped on your facilities team. We do have support contracts with all of our schools. So we go out and certify all devices annually. And we also make sure that if there's an issue, it's just replacement. We come out and switch to devices, and the materials get switched out as they come up on expiration dates. We do work with our schools for years and years and years. We don't ever intend on just dropping a box off or some software and having you guys manage it. It's a partnership. So.
And I just wanted to ask again, did you say 300 schools or 300 districts?
300 campuses.
Okay.
So some of our camp districts have, 30, 40 campuses, and some are just K-12 campuses like Oskaloosa.
Okay. So it's not 300
Not
total
300
districts.
right.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Not to put you on the spot,
Sure.
but I know a few years ago, and I can't remember how many years ago, Templeton's might be able to help me out, but when Safe Defend, and I think it was Jeff, first came down to present this to some parents who were trying to get things going. I know he mentioned at that time, being an alum of our district,
Right.
that he would do his best to see that if we did this, we could get it at cost. Do you know if that is something that's still on the table or anything like that?
I'm sure costs have changed, but I'm very confident you would get an alumni proposal.
Okay. I would really like to see us, again, I think there is enough, this is an issue that none of us like, that we even have to think about this stuff, but the bottom line is we do. There's no divide there. Everybody wants their kids to be safe. I don't care what your politics are or anything like that. And I do feel like there's a lot of support within the community. And if we had to look into funding support from the Emporia Community Foundation, Boyer, Jones, I mean, we have entities that have the safety of the community and especially our children. But we've also mentioned in terms of recruiting and retaining top-notch people, they want to feel safe and they want to know that we're doing things to deter any sort of, negative behavior. And I just think this is something that everyone can agree it's worth trying to invest in.
On that subject, when I just think in my head the math, $1,000 times 500, I guess my only concern is that if we go through and do this, I don't want us to be in a position where some classrooms have a safety box and others don't, because I can see that just not looking right, but also putting people in a situation where if there was extreme violence, maybe some staff and students have tools and others don't. So cost is kind of, I think, going to be our big barrier here. It's not something we're going to be able to pull off now, but I agree that we can look at other avenues and try to get the funding together because it's worth it to pursue. With respect to the items in the safety boxes, what is the upkeep in getting them cycled, making sure that they're not expired? I don't know I don't know if tourniquets expire. It's not
No.
my field.
So we do that as part of our support plan, and we do it annually for you. Make sure that when you're ready for the first day of school, it's all been tested and ready to go. And we also monitor the system real time throughout the year. And one thing that we do that is extremely valuable to school districts is we help you with your drill process. And we give you tools to make it mental exercises that are not stressful. So one of the biggest challenges schools have is how do we do these intruder or lockdown drills without stressing the community? We give you a narrative, and once you go through this once or twice, it's just like any other drill that you do. And then if you ever need the system, you'll respond according to how you've been trained and how the drills have gone. I feel terrible. I have run over a long time.
Well, we had a lot of questions.
Yeah, we put you to work.
Well, I just feel bad for anybody behind me then that needs to speak. So
That's their fault for coming to a school board meeting.
Well, again, it's what we do is help you prepare for the worst day that should never happen. But if it does, we want to make sure that everybody that has a stake in the emergency process was prepared and it goes as efficiently as possible. So that's our job.
Okay. Thank you very much. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
your
Yes,
presentation.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming all the way from Gardner. We appreciate it.
Huh? We have a request for a 5-minute break. Do you mind, Jared? Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Jared, for waiting.
Do not
And
apologize.
everyone else, thank you. Okay, item 7E, Emporia High Safety Debrief.
I'm going to start with kind of what Dr. Thomas mentioned just a little bit ago. This isn't something any of us want to talk about, but we must. Every situation that we encounter is obviously different. Everyone is handled different. Every situation afterwards, there are different things we talk about. And I'm really just going to hit some highlights of what our response was from the incident at the high school a couple of weeks ago. I'm not going to focus on individual students. I'm not going to focus on the whole situation, but rather our response and then the things that have happened afterwards. Most importantly, I do want to let you know, and anyone listening, that we take this extremely seriously. I've never been one that's been complacent and think this can't happen here, but this hit home. I just want everybody to know how seriously I've taken it, that I know the administration has taken it, and I just want to highlight the conversations and the things that we've talked about since then and throughout some of that situation. So really weird start to the day, late start Wednesday. Obviously, we've got hundreds, if not over 1,000 people entering the building. Some are still outside. You know, Emporia High School on any given day is the second largest city in Lyon County. There's a lot going on there. So the situation didn't happen at a time where it was easy to plan for, and it is certainly a tough time to have to work through. But I do want to applaud all of the staff members and the students out there, not just at that school, but the others. Mr. Martin was just telling me he heard from a parent this week about the response that the middle school had and how happy they were with that. Now, were there some things that we can improve on? Absolutely. And we'll talk through some of those here in just a moment. But again, it was the beginning of the day, lots of students moving in and out. We knew that the situation had moved outside of the doors of the high school. So we immediately, Mr. Fisher had me on the phone. They put the building in lockdown. With kids all over the building still because the bell hadn't rung. You've got kids not even near their first block classroom. So, when the announcement was made, obviously some difficult timing there when a bell was sounding. So those two systems didn't mesh, and some of the parts of the building didn't hear the announcement. We've worked through that. That was just simply a timing issue, and it was a bad situation. But the way our staff and our students reacted really helped the whole situation. They knew what to do. They practiced what they did. Staff members were pulling students in. Students were getting into the classrooms, but they acted. We had staff at the front doors. They were helping students coming in late get to a safe place, whether that was a classroom, whether that was just in the office area. And the staff took care of the students that were with them. Some things that went well, a lot went well. Number one, there was a safe resolution, thank goodness. It could have gone very differently. We know that and have talked about that and will continue to prepare for that. I was very glad to hear what Dan was talking about earlier. He gave some great information, great statistics, and it's things we need to keep in front of us and do every single day. So the things that went well. First of all, we keep saying, if you see something, say something. And a student did. They saw the situation in a restroom and they went and got help. Did it take some time? Like Dan was mentioning, how quick do you want that response to be? Well, yeah, that's a big place to find the security officer. They could have gone to a teacher. There's a million things that student could have done, but thank goodness they reported it. So the security officer, the administration acted on that very quickly and really helped things expedite from there. We had direct communication. Our security officers have the opportunity and availability to directly communicate through the Emporia Police Department frequencies. He switched his radio over very quickly and was able to make that call without fumbling for a phone, without some of these other things that were mentioned, but just had that direct contact, and that helped the response so much more quickly. Luckily, there were officers in the area. I want to applaud the Employee Police Department and Lyon County Sheriff's Department for their quick response. When I pulled in, I mean, they were everywhere around the school perimeter. But there were several that were in close proximity, but I know others came as they could get there. So quick thinking on Officer Ayers' part and the administration. Not only was Employee High in lockdown, obviously, some other places were in lockdown. I'll talk about some of the questions that we've gotten about that here in just a moment. Want to also thank the police department for not only their response, but for coming into the building afterwards and debriefing quickly with the administrative team. They spent a good amount of time talking about the situation, what was going on, what's next, what they could have done differently. So that was great. Thank them for leaving a couple of folks on site the rest of the day. Their vehicles were there. They had people inside just to let people know that things were safe. Communication. Things went well with communication, but we also know there were some communication snafus, and we'll talk about that. Communication within the building, very proud of Mr. Fisher. He and I worked very closely together as we were doing that. I was on the one phone with Dr. Harder and Mr. Landgren as they were preparing statements for parents, for community, for media, and all of that. We were preparing statements for in the building. So the communication, we know, is not going to get out quicker from us than it is a student with a phone in their hand. Text, social media, as much as we'll try, that'll never happen. We are going to put out very accurate information and as timely of information that we can. But when a situation changes as rapidly as it was there or in any situation, we don't want to put out information that's going to change 5 seconds later and just keep alarming people. We're spinning our wheels, so to speak, just by trying to put together all of these communications. Our first and foremost priority is the safety of everyone that is there. I'm very proud of the way that the administration and the staff handled that day. Staff who stepped up. We had many more staff members whose first block plan, they came up to help. Hey, where do you need me? What can I do? They were very helpful in that, stationed at the front doors for students that were coming in. I mentioned the debrief with the police department. Mr. Fisher's made himself available, as well as Mr. Matthews, the rest of the staff out there, to answer questions, to meet with people, to provide supportive measures for not only the staff, but the students that are there. Mr. Fisher met with the staff that day after school just to give a brief overview and to check in on people, to check their states, to see what we could do to help support them. We had a team from our offices meet with the administrative team, security officers from the district the next morning. And I've got a 4-page sheet here that we've come up with, and I keep adding to. I was writing some things down this evening as we were speaking of things that went well, things that didn't, things we need to improve on. We've got a to-do list where we assigned all of those tasks to someone. So we have taken some very proactive steps as a learning experience from this. It's terrible to have to learn from something like this, but if we don't, then we are missing the boat. So again, a lot of great things went well that day. Not only did Mr. Martin's comment from a parent really help make me feel better about the response that was there. Another staff member that isn't typically at the high school was there that morning. They were working on something and kind of witnessed the way the staff and students handled it. They said that really, it's not exactly, but it was really, really close to what I envisioned a lockdown situation might be, just the way everyone responded to it. So it was good to hear that comment and the training that we've done, the planning, the preparedness, the practice, that it did pay off in that situation. So questions. Obviously, there are a lot. Many of them surrounded around communication, parent communication. I know there were some upset folks that we didn't just immediately start sending messages out. Again, the safety of everyone involved there is the utmost priority first. Once we had things under control, they were working on messages the whole time that situation was unfolding. But we weren't prepared to send everything out yet. Internally, we were. Dathan sent a message out after he made the announcements just to staff saying, here's the situation, stay tuned. Things are safe right now. So hopefully that helped bring that level back down as Dan was talking in his presentation. Other communications to parents, we know some of the emails in the system weren't correct. So whether it was entered incorrectly at enrollment, whether it was in the wrong field in Power School, we met with secretaries, all district secretaries yesterday. One of their tasks leaving that meeting was to go back and check to make sure parent emails were in the right field so that the one field we pull from gets sent out. Some people have opted out of those communications too. Just can't do that. Ultimately, once we had the list of who messages went out to, including students, we had a pretty large list that didn't get it. But then I think in the end, there were only about 3 people, if I remember correctly, that didn't get a message at all. So communications is something we know that in every situation, we're going to have to do differently, handle differently. We're going to get questions about it. But I can tell you that our groups were working very closely together to put out the communications that we needed to help with the situation in that moment. Another question, why wasn't Timmerman put in lockdown? Great question. It's come from staff, it came from the principals, come from the community. When I got the first call, I was on my way and came by Village. There were 100 kids outside. I understood one of the directions of travel was toward the pond area or Walmart. So naturally, knowing that, made the call there. So the question came yesterday from secretaries. What about the Learning Center? Completely forgot about them. I still feel bad. But we've got a plan in place to make that call the next time. The tech college transitions, the middle school. We didn't have a designated person that if we ever are in a lockdown, we didn't have that person identified who would call those places. We do now. And that happened that next morning. After we debriefed, Mr. Fisher assigned somebody and they know that that's their first responsibility. So we know, again, communications can be better, but we felt like we did a pretty good job of communicating within the buildings and within the team. So back to Timmerman. Ms. Reaver, I think you asked earlier, do staff know that they have the ability to do this? If they don't, they should, and they will. Several years ago, one of our summer trainings really focused on just the statement, you are the decision maker. I don't care if you're a cook, a student, a parent, whoever. If you see something that's not right, you're not calling 911. You can be putting the building in lockdown. So again, we've debriefed with all of the principals in Emporia, all the administrators, and re-emphasized that. We've had a lot of turnover in teaching staff. So we need to keep preaching that mantra of them being the decision makers. And I mean, they have to be able to make that call to put a building on lockdown. We didn't know our lockdown code here in the building because of the numbers of turnover that we have. We've got that figured out. So internally, we continue to work on things every day to make these situations better. I keep skipping around and I apologize. Back to Timmerman. So I have the ability to listen in on the police frequencies too, knowing that the situation had been contained outside of the building. We didn't feel the need to call them. Were they close to that place? Yes. Had the situation gone on any longer, that was my next call, was to let them know. But again, if they were hearing it, we want them to be able to make that decision for what's best for their building, as we do all of our schools. So knowing that was contained, had the police expanded their perimeter, and I know at one point they had talked about that, again, that call would have been made to put that school or other schools if we needed to on lockdown. I know the police were communicating with hotels nearby, businesses nearby to make that happen as well. So we learned a lot of things. We learned about our email system. We know we need to check that. We talked about a lot of other internal things, whether that was doors or locks or intercoms. What else do I have down here? Transportation, busing. Most of the buses, I think, in fact, all of them had dropped off when the situation happened. But it's a situation where we probably needed to make that call to say, hey, are all of your buses in? If not, avoid the schools for a little bit. We were in very direct contact with them when a situation outside of our schools happened earlier in the year over on the east side of town. And in fact, kids came back here and were reunified with a parent or a guardian. So, so many moving parts, and I'm just giving you a few of those to help folks think about how quickly things change in these situations. Kind of alluded to it again. Dr. Thomas, you mentioned that we don't know where this is going to happen. Is it a restaurant? Is it Walmart? Is it wherever? Part of, I think, their training, but I think it should be just everybody's general thinking. It's just that situational awareness. Where am I at? What's going on around me? What capabilities do I have? If something, we don't want people to freak out and just that's all they think about. But that situational awareness on everyone's part is so key. So some things that we've done, intercoms. The very next day, we were starting to test intercoms. That Friday, Mrs. Leeds went around. I don't think we had school that day. Played music over the intercom system, and custodians, staff members just walked around. They had maps or they had a list of things on where intercoms weren't working. So I apologize to Paul and his tech team because they're probably getting inundated with those lists right now. I've gotten a couple from schools, so I know the elementary schools are testing theirs. It's just, I know with construction, that's thrown another little kink in there as far as getting communication systems to talk. But we're getting there. We're testing those systems to make sure that they are reliable. Continued conversations on multiple aspects of safety, designating people to make those critical calls. The email system, the to-do lists, researching options like Safe Defend here tonight. There are multiple options out there and thousands of dollars just waiting to be spent. We've got to make sure that the system is meeting the needs of what it takes a multi-layered approach. We know that, but we just have to make sure it's meeting the needs that we have here. Love the idea of exploring grants. In fact, Jen Art and I were talking today about 2 potential grants that are currently available. There's a short timeline. Again, we don't want to just apply for those to pull in any kind of system that we can get if it's not going to meet our needs. Every year, though, there's grants for things like this. We've got some great community partners here that hopefully we can touch base with. So I'm rambling. I'm talking about a lot of different things here. I can answer any questions that you've got that without providing a lot of detail, but I definitely want to allow you the opportunity to ask some questions.
I have a question / statement, I guess. I know one of the biggest concerns that I heard about from parents was the fact, and this kind of relates to what Sarisa was talking about earlier, that it seemed like, okay, we got everything under control, and yes, it ended better than we really could have hoped on both sides of the incident. But it felt like it was like, okay, it's over, go to class, go on with your day. And no doubt, I mean, my son was like, Mom, it's fine. Well, some kids are really resilient that way, but others aren't and probably had a hard time focusing, and minds were probably going the rest of the day on to what could have happened. And so I feel like we need to look at what are we going to do when there is a scare and it maybe doesn't come to fruition or it gets extinguished or whatever. How can we help those kids who maybe, again, just that resilience isn't there, that ability to handle that, so they don't just feel like, go to class, go on with your day when maybe they're not feeling like they can.
Totally agree. I think in one of Mr. Fischel's final announcements that morning after the situation that did ended was, if you need to talk to someone, we have people available. So we definitely need to make sure that they have that avenue, not just in a situation like this, but for anything. Anytime we can provide those supportive measures, we want them to know that our staff, whether it's a counselor, an administrator, a teacher, whomever, they're there to help them. But again, the follow-up after that is so important. At the end of the day, Dathan could tell that on his staff members, it was weighing heavy. It still does. And that's where we've got to be there for each other. We've got to continue to look for those supports within our buildings, within the district, within our community to help support the needs that are present.
I do want to
Appreciate
add too, I was out there just checking in the different classrooms and teachers completely adjusted. So they weren't teaching just right, like just go right back to what we were doing. They were decompressing. They were letting kids just have a little extra time. So you could tell and you could feel it when you walked in the building. And I know Mr. Fisher and the other administrators were out throughout the building checking in on everybody.
Yeah, they were. Our first goal was to get kids to the right class. But obviously teaching wasn't the first thing on everyone's mind, nor learning. So it is important that we allow kids the opportunity to say, hey, man, what just happened? How can we support each other to get each other through this? Great thoughts, though.
I have one more thing. And again, just in regards to what a lot of us, I think, heard from parents, and again, also pertains to what Teresa discussed before. And that is, and I understand there cannot and should not be cameras in the bathrooms. I get that. But they're a weakness. And when someone can take their bag in there and do things and they're not on camera and they can, I mean, there are students at our middle school and high school who will not and do not go to the bathroom, because that's where bullying, that's where they're afraid of what someone's going to do with their camera. They are a weakness for not just violence, and again, someone getting something out of their bag to then step out and use, whether that's a sharp object or whatever, but just everything with the bullying or the potential for attacking someone in any sort of physical way. And I just feel like we need to have a discussion on what to do to deal with that situation. Students shouldn't feel unsafe to go use the restroom during their day for any reason. And again, I know cameras aren't an option, but there just seems like there needs to be something we can do so they feel safer and like they can use those, not be at risk.
Right. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here, but I know Mr. Martin at the middle school and his staff have put some things in place this year with electronic planners. They're piloting some things that I think they really liked and that they may move school-wide next year. I think the high school is even looking at that. I know they've really worked a lot on cell phones this year at the middle school. I know they've been very present out in not just the hallways, but peeking into the restroom. So, we've got a lot of capabilities to do just some small things like that. I agree, cameras in the restrooms, a lot of legal issues there, but at the same time, we know some students probably have that uncomfortable feeling. But I think staff presence and letting kids know, again, if you see something, say something. That's really what helped us in this situation. If we don't know about it, we can't help.
I have a question. I'm trying to understand exactly what happened with the intercom. We got at least maybe one email from a concerned parent about that. And if I understand how that sort of broke down, I think there was a standard announcement over the intercom at the time that Mr. Fisher was trying to make the announcement, and then the pre-recorded announcement, the ringing of the bell, whatever it was, basically just superseded his voice, right? And that's since been fixed at the high school. I'm assuming we've looked at the other buildings to make sure that type of kink couldn't replicate there in the same scenario.
Yeah, anytime you've got two systems talking to each other at the same time, and Mr. Beatles, I may have to rely on you here, but anytime you've got signals coming from two systems, one's gonna override the other. Sometimes they may work in tandem, and it's gonna be a jumbled mess. That just happened to be the situation where they were going at the same time. Everything else, the other announcements, in fact, I went to the science wing when another announcement was made just to make sure they could hear it, and it did seem to come through clearly. In other buildings, it's something we are looking at. I know with some of the new construction, there are new fire alarms. They don't just do the bam, bam. Now they're talking to you. Buildings didn't know that when those new systems came on. So, those are surprises. So we're working through a lot of the things with the new construction. There's some great systems in place. We just need to make sure that we're training our staff on what's there, what's available, what it means. Walnut was a situation earlier this year. They've got a lockdown button. It just puts information out to the building where it talks level 3 lockdown, go into a lockdown. But nobody can make an announcement over that. Dan's system had a 2-minute period of time, and then it stopped, and then announcements could be made following that. So again, we're getting to know our systems. We're being much more aggressive with that in the last week, just to make sure that we have our systems operating properly.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for coming tonight and just sharing all of this and for this transparency that our whole community knows what happens. As board members, we have a little bit more insight that you now shared with everyone. And there's so many heroes in this situation, and we have to remember that. Like the student who saw something and said something is the true hero in all of this. And so I want to thank that student for doing the right thing, and for whoever that student reported to, for them to take it seriously. When my kid came home that day, he told me he felt safe. He felt safe all day. But he talked about his teachers and how they really took care of the kids. And, I talked to teachers just randomly whenever I would see them, and they would say, "Oh gosh, of course I didn't teach that day. We colored and I played good soft music, and we took care of our kids that day." And that's what teachers and that's what administrators do. And to hear, the bravery of our administrators and officer heirs who, did their job, but they did more than their job that day. They took care of our kids. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone who made the day safer for our kids. We can always learn, but we should also acknowledge and appreciate that so much went right that day. So thank you.
So as far as the emails go, do you get a bounce back from Power School? Like that tells you so that you can reach out to those families to get updated emails if they haven't opted out?
Great question. I may have to defer to Dr. Harder or Mr.
Mr.
Langren.
You want to come to the,
Sorry. Thanks, Linda.
Yes, Power School does generate a report, and so you can go through that report and you can see who received that email and at what email address, which emails were blocked, which emails did not deliver, which ones bounced back, that sort of thing. So you can go back through that, and that's what we did afterwards.
Okay, great.
And that's how we found out that
I mean, it sounded like, that's what you were doing. I just want to make sure there was like a formal
right
follow-up.
Yep, that's exactly what we did, and that's how we found out how many parents didn't receive it, but all but 3 families were able to receive that message
Okay.
either through the parent or through the student, and that's why we send it to both ways.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I just would want to add that I want to echo Jamie's comment about, I felt our staff went above and beyond. And to recognize that was the first thing that I took from this, is that we responded with our training, we took care of kids, and that I know there were some complaints about notifying people, but even the Safe Defend guy was like, our system doesn't notify parents. So again, the priority is taking care of kids and getting that situation resolved. Then we can worry about communicating out once we know what's actually going on, because we don't know how that situation is going to resolve in the minute. So if you're expecting communication within the first 5 minutes, I mean, I think my wife was getting texts from my daughter. So, and again, same thing as Jamie, they were taking it easy, weren't focused on class that day. They were focused on, let's talk about how we're feeling and get through this together. I did, at a conference I was at recently, attended a safety meeting from Homeland Security, which I know you've done, and they have assessments so we can walk through scenarios and identify where we might have shortcomings in our system that we do have for us. And so again, I would encourage us, like you said, to find a system that meets the needs that we have for our district, because all the districts are unique, and we have so many buildings, so many classrooms, and what's going to work best for us. And I kind of like Jen's idea to say, well, maybe we could explore with just starting at the secondary level and see how that goes, to see, is this going to work? Is this the right fit for us? Because we're talking about a lot of money, and especially when we're talking about that kind of dollars, maybe trying it in a building or two, the ones that we feel are the most high risk, that we can do that with. Then at the end of the day, these students, like these are our community, these are our kids. So, I try not to forget that at the end of the day, that these are all our kids, and we need to be trying to meet all their needs. And obviously we're not meeting some of them because these situations are happening, but they're still our kids. When we talk about all this fear, these are our kids that we're afraid of. These are our community members. So I always keep that in the back of my mind.
Great thoughts.
Well, first, I would like to applaud you all for the work that you did last week and for all the efforts that you've taken since then to move forward. And I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing. I also attended the same presentation that Art did. which sounded very similar, Jared, to what you had presented to us from Homeland Security. And I think that even after hearing the Safe Defend presentation, something that really resonated with me is ensuring that we're doing the proactive steps to make sure we never get to this point in the first place. Like, I was super impressed with what Safe Defend has to offer. However, I hope that we never encounter a situation where we have to use it because we've done the work on the back end.
And there is a lot of back-end work being done, not just from this safety standpoint. Mrs. Stanley, her team, Mrs. Stranahan upstairs, they've been meeting with SSSs and school psychs and folks regularly this year to work on some of that mental health side of things, dealing with some of the behaviors that are posing some challenges for us. Thank you.
I also want to point out that I think this really highlights the importance of the school resource security officers. One of the things I took from the Safe Defend presentation was that, and I'm probably butchering what he said, but something to the effect of most of those extreme violent events are already resolved typically by staff, self-suicide, or your school security resource officer before your actual traditional, good guy with the badge shows up. So I think Officer Ayers is pretty amazing, and I think he really deserves a big commendation from us because he ran right into danger, and I just want to make sure to honor him.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions this evening? Okay, well, thank you for this update. It was very much needed tonight. There was a lot of questions and concern, and rightly so, and we appreciate you being so thorough, and every single person who works on all of this, and everybody else already said thank you, but thanks to everyone who does the hard work every day. Thank you. Okay. Is this you? You still get to stay?
I'm going to lay the foundation here.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
doesn't look like we're just swan diving right into this. So we've been talking about this, working on this since last June. So we went to, when we were realizing, and back up even more back in the spring, a year ago, we were going to the chamber meetings and talking about the need for childcare. And so chamber organized a meeting to bring businesses, school district, different representatives together. And I went to the meeting saying, who's going to solve our problem for us about childcare for our staff? And so then I walked away knowing we're going to have to solve it ourselves because there's just not enough childcare options. So we put together a childcare committee. Mrs. Reaver is on that. Dr. McGee, he has joined that as well. So we have great representatives. It's been very well attended, lots of really great input. So as we've been working toward this, we are planning on 4 childcare classrooms, 1 in each building of those 4 buildings. So we have Walnut Village, Logan, and our Jones Early Childhood Development Center. So we would have 1 classroom. And the reason we would have 1 classroom is that if we have more than a classroom, it becomes a facility. And that's a whole other level of requirements. So we're to the point now of being able to have a description for childcare providers in those classrooms. So that is what Mr. Giffen is going to talk about.
It's going to be much more brief. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I was going to prelude with some of that information. So thank you for kind of setting the stage there. We really took some of what our paraprofessional and aide job descriptions had and entailed. We also reached out to Rose Hill, who also has childcare within their district. They were able to provide 3 different job descriptions for 3 different levels of folks that they have on their staff. So we really just took what they had, combined it with ours, and put some things in place here that I think will give us a great start for what we're expecting the folks in our classrooms, I guess they are classrooms, they're in our schools. Kids are going to be there and learning and being taken care of. But feel like this will give us a good framework to start with, provide people who are looking at the job description online information about whether they want to apply or not, but then also walk them through some of what the basics are of the job. So since this is a new position, new job description, we wanted to run it by you for your approval so we can post the job and then take next steps with the program.
I might just add, excuse me, I didn't know you used Rose Hill, but I did tour that as part of the pre-conference for KASB in November. And it was very impressive what they were doing. And I know we're a different district and we have some different, but they've had success and it's good to see what they're doing and how they've adapted. So.
Calling on you as an expert too, to come and rock some babies. And
Does anyone have any questions?
I just wanted to echo some of what Dr. Harder said. We have a really engaged committee of teachers and staff, and there's a lot of excitement. They're like sharing from their buildings, and I've talked to a few teachers who they're also excited about the possibility of childcare. I think it's a game changer for us when it comes to showing that we are really deeply invested in our teachers and our staff, and we want to make sure that they have quality childcare every day. So the committee has really, we've talked about everything. You name it, we have talked about it because we're really trying to process through everything to make sure that not only do we most importantly take care of the teachers' needs, but we as a district can be really responsive and the buildings can be really responsive. So I'm really excited about the direction of this. And if I run on the school board, I would totally apply for this job because I would want to hold babies all day long.
So previously I had the privilege of working in a district with childcare, and it was such a great opportunity for our staff to have. So I'm really excited to see this here as well. And I was just wondering, how many applicants or candidates are we anticipating on hiring?
it's a great question. We don't know if we'll get internal transfers, somebody that's wanting to change to stay within a building to do something a little bit different. We hope that we'll get many people from outside applying for the positions. We're still looking obviously at applications, surveying our staff to see how many we're going to need, see how many people we're going to need at any given time during the day. The high school's got a great program there. The tech college is building an early childhood program. So hopefully we can get people in on a part-time basis if we need to share some. There's just so many options, and the committee's still working through that. But I think we'll just anticipate seeing what we get when the job goes live.
Great, thank you.
And what I also love is just, when you get to be in the discussions, from the ground floor, like we get to imagine the possibilities. And one of the things that we talked about at our last meeting was not only would this be a huge service for our faculty and staff, but also if we have teenage parents, if any of our students are parents, this could also be hopefully an option for them. So, we're really trying to think about just the needs of our entire district and the realities of the childcare situation in our community.
Everyone here is excited about this position. As someone who practiced family law, I can tell you, having done child support worksheets, divorces, and domestic relations affidavits, it's no lie when I say that the cost of childcare literally for your average employee it's a paycheck. It is literally one whole paycheck of that month. It's extraordinary and it's extravagant, and it's a great investment for our teachers and community because you're really going to save people a lot of money that they can put towards their family and their day-to-day needs.
Clarification.
No, I mean, it's not going to be as expensive as what private childcare would be, is what I'm trying to get at. That's my understanding. What is the expense then?
So we will,
we
it will
still
not be
working that out?
it will not be cost neutral.
Okay.
So that's part of the survey and we want to make it affordable. So we are looking at a sliding scale. So if we have a single parent who's a staff member, so that person could qualify for a sliding scale.
And that
So we're
would-
trying to be very cognizant of all of that, but then also know that the district will be putting in more money because that will not meet the cost because we'll still provide benefits and we'll be paying a competitive wage.
Correct. And I apologize if it sounded like I misquoted anything there, but believe me when I say even that discount really matters to the day-to-day pocketbook of people. Jamie, I think you've put a lot of work into this. Maybe it's time for a motion.
Is that the wishes of anyone else have anything? Okay. I move to approve the updated board policies. Oh, no, sorry, I'm on the wrong item. I have jumped ahead. So good job on the policy update. I move to approve the job description for childcare provider as submitted.
Second.
Thank you for that great discussion and all this hard work. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Wonderful, helping us keep moving forward. Okay, item 7G, policy updates from KASB and new policy recommendations.
Yes, that's me. Try to make this quick, and that way we can get to Jamie's motion. So each year, twice a year, KSB puts out a new set of recommendations for board policy approvals. The December edition is what we are looking at here tonight. There was quite an extensive list in the fall that we broke up into a couple of chunks. There's one of the items that came in the June edition that we didn't include that's on here tonight. I'll just walk through some of these briefly and give a little bit of background on what these policies are. So GAAP, complaints of discrimination. Really, this one was modified with minimal types of recommendations. All it really did was outline the procedures for complaints. I do want to say that GAAP, JCE, and KN are related. There's a lot of language that is included in all three of those. Policy KN was changed significantly, which really affected some other policies. So that's why those are in there.
I do have a question about this policy and also all of the ones you just referenced. So as I read the policy, there's a couple of things that I read. So the first one is on page 4 where it says informal procedures. And I think that that's a really simple term for this process. I don't feel like informal makes it seem as like, hey, I'm going to tell you something, in the hallway and just, hey, but there is a formality to even this step of the process and that it has to be documented. And I would be more in favor of changing that language just to denote the importance and the seriousness of any time someone would make a complaint. I don't know if it's step 1, as simple as that, and then the formal complaint procedure could be step 2. But again, I just wanted to give it the seriousness and make sure the language represents what's happening here.
But that is the language recommended by KASB legal, correct?
Right.
So we would need to figure out something different
Oh, absolutely.
to have them approve.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's if it gets to
'Cause
that point.
if this is what they recommended, I don't know what we would change.
Then I don't like informal procedures. So
Okay.
that's what I would like us to change actually to something else.
Okay.
And then also under formal procedures, it says that basically the statute of limitations, and those are my words, is 180 days. You have to make your complaint within 180 days. Do you have more information of why that's the target, time period?
I think that again, all of the situations I've dealt with formal complaints, that is the standard that is recommended by them. I don't know if it's truly a legal statute. It's something we would have to look into, but it's what all schools and districts across the state use.
Yeah, and I am aware that this is what KSB has recommended. It's just that I also want to think about, again, because these could be serious issues, and if someone has been a victim of something, I don't want them to think 6 months, my time is up. I mean, sometimes if someone has been a victim of any kind of situation, it might take them a lot longer to process it, figure it out, and come to the realization of what may have happened to them was wrong. And so I don't want to put a time period on a wrong.
Talking with an attorney, I asked about that one time in a situation that came up, and they didn't say the 180 was hard and fast. I think that was their legal interpretation of it. So I think every situation we're going to have to weigh and just see what the complaint is, what the situation is, and weigh that individually. We would definitely be consulting with attorneys if we're in that boat. I want to make sure I've got this right. You are suggesting, and I know the board will have to talk about this a little more, but perhaps taking those 3 off, looking a little bit more at the informal piece.
Yeah, I just think changing the term informal procedure to, I don't know, I have not thought it through all the way,
Okay.
but maybe, step 1, because it is sort of like saying this is the ladder of escalation. And so I want to, I want that first step to show the seriousness.
Right.
And informal, again, does not.
And just thinking off the top of my
Mhm.
head, and I don't know if that's why this language mirrors other language, but if we do like a suspension or expulsion, the terms informal hearing are what we would use for a shorter term type of suspension. Then we get to the formal, which is obviously the longer term. So I'm sure there's some connection there with a little bit more informal steps than what would legally be required in some other steps. So I can certainly look into it, but we'll take that into consideration as we go along here.
It won't stop my vote, of course, because I know we need to get these policies through, but it's something I'd like us to maybe explore for a little bit down the road.
Okay. And definitely I want everybody to know too that when policies are passed, especially if they involve complaint procedures and specific things we want to do, we aren't just approving them here. Casey's printing them off and putting them in a book. The ones that have significant impact, we'll be reviewing with our administrators who work through these processes on the basis when they come in.
Would it be preferable to have this be a first reading and come back? So continue to go through and
Sure.
then we'll
Yep.
take, Mr. Giffen will take input and then we'll check with KSB and bring it back.
Certainly an option. Okay. So we've kind of tackled those three. GCRF on non-school employment, that was a pretty insignificant change. It just talks about when classified employees leave may be taken. For IDAB support programs, it talks about dropout prevention and homebound instruction. There was just some language in there that was clarified. JBE on truancy talks about some things that were updated actually in our fall meeting, but they wanted to clarify some things specific to gifted and exceptional children. It made it seem like in the old language that they were excluded from compulsory attendance, and they just clarified some language on that one. JCE, we've kind of hit on, again, the procedures for complaints that was there. JCF, I want to spend just a moment on this one. Hazing is a new policy that KASB wrote actually in December. It was not on the list of recommended changes, but we just felt very strongly that that this needed to be a part of our policy set, because we do not condone or tolerate this type of behavior in our schools and our classrooms. It's just not acceptable. So we felt very strongly that that this needed to be added to our policy set, not only there, but also in our student handbooks, so that it was very clear what expectations were.
I have a couple of questions about this policy as well. Very much needed. I am concerned a little bit about some of the language. It says, administrators, teachers, other employees, and students who fail to abide by this policy may be subject to. That doesn't seem strong enough for me. I then looked at the high school handbook. And when I look at student behaviors and on like page 11 or something, I looked at student behaviors and I see ones that are marked with an asterisk that may result in automatic suspension out of school with a possibility of a long-term suspension. I'm just trying to like reconcile part of what we heard tonight in public comments, but also some of the notes that I had already made coming into tonight's meeting. I want to make sure that it's a policy, and we absolutely need this policy. We've talked about it so much. But how do we make sure, where does it fit into student behavior? Can someone be suspended from school? And also, like, how do we, and I know that you are all in charge of implementing policy, but we're also in charge of, school safety is a really important role of the board. But I also just wonder how we, how does this come out in practice? How does someone, if they're accused of hazing, like how do they get to continue in any of the activities? How do we make sure that the person who did the hazing is appropriately punished? So I guess for me, I have a lot of questions that, yes, we need this policy, but a lot of deeper questions about what practice looks like.
And I want to chime into that before you answer, because it goes with Jamie's question. How does this policy address keeping the victim away from the person who hazed them? Or if it does?
So those are questions we're definitely going to need to talk through. First step is getting something in place. Next steps are obviously working with our administration on consistent practices and procedures and guidelines and expectations for the very things that you're speaking to. We take it seriously. I can assure you of that. Every situation will be different in some instances. The gamut of bullying. I actually took several different districts' hazing policies and put them into one. suggested it to KASB, and they said, we don't recommend that. This is what we wrote, and this is the one that we would recommend that you use. I'm sure they've got much more legal background than I do in all of these, all of the things that are in here. But to agree that we need to take it seriously. We need expectations in place. We need supportive measures in place if indeed those students need it. In any of these cases, we stress that up front throughout our processes so that students, parents, staff members know that we have measures in place to help support them. But those other circumstances, everyone's going to be different, and we would have to put some different procedures in place to ensure protection if there were indeed worries about things happening.
Again, this is definitely a policy I absolutely support. And also, it's definitely a continued conversation to help us ensure the safety of our students.
Absolutely. Yeah, it won't stop here.
Right, because policy and procedure are obviously different. So tonight we're talking about policies. But yes, we definitely need to update our procedures and then talk about those again soon.
I absolutely
Yep.
get that.
Yep.
And also student safety is not something that I can't have a policy discussion without stating my opinion about our ethical, moral, legal responsibility to
Absolutely.
keeping our kids safe.
Absolutely.
And so if the opportunities is here to finally talk about hazing at a board meeting, I'm going to do it.
Good for you. Good job, Jamie.
Any other questions about that policy?
Just that since this is sort of a first reading, I'd like to see if we could have some attention towards the subject that I mentioned, which is that some hazing incident happens. Perhaps this person isn't completely expelled, but I feel like there should be some sort of guardrail in terms of how those students might interact. In law land, for instance, if you batter someone, you get charged with a crime, you're going to get a no contact order. You're not going to be able to contact the victim. You're not going to be able to live around them. It's going to be on you to see them walking down the hall and going the other direction. You can't talk to the witnesses or, coerce them or something to that effect. And of course, depending on the gravity of what the incident was, you may not be in a position where it's necessary to put some sort of wall between students for the whole rest of their high school career. It really does. There has to be some sort of malleable way in which you actually implement that. But I do feel like that should be in writing. There should be some sort of onus on us to separate those students once that suspension, short-term, long-term, has resolved itself.
I don't want to speak for Mr. Fisher, Mr. Matthews. Again, that's something we will definitely need to sit down, talk through. We will throw what if scenarios out because there are many out there to talk about, and each one will be different. I know one of the processes for like a suspension is kind of a reintegration conference, reentry conference, especially in long-term situations. So in those cases, we definitely want to talk to the student parents about, again, supportive measures. What kinds of things do you need? Are you feeling threatened? Has anything happened? What do those malleable kinds of things look like? What can we do to help support that student and that family? But again, if they don't say anything, or if we don't know, we can't very well do that. So again, definitely conversations that are not going to stop here. It's new, it's needed, and it will continue with not just high school, middle school, but across our district.
And I realize you're kind of in the hot seat. It's like you're not standing there and you're not against hazing, like you're not against the hazing policy. So I don't want to put too much on you there. I do know that obviously KASB has drafted this. Their attorneys deal with the Title IX investigations and the sort of things that I'm not really in the same wheelhouse for. But since this is a reading, I'd be curious if we could ask whoever the counterpart at KASB is, if there is any language in hazing policies, or if it's common for there to be language in hazing policies that actually refers to, I don't want to say sexual harassment, because I feel like hazing that has a sexual component, even if it's about degradation and humiliation, is a little bit different than sexual harassment done to somehow alleviate your own sexual interests, right? I feel like there's a difference there in hazing. And this doesn't seem to make any reference to conduct that could be humiliating or degrading in a sexual component, even if there isn't a sense of, I'm probably not saying it right, but it's not mentioned in there. And I'd be kind of curious to hear from their attorneys why that is. If they feel that it's just absorbed in our general sexual harassment policy, it's probably already there, but I feel like that's something that happens with respect to hazing. We've heard about that, and I feel like that is something I'd like some more information on, if maybe there's a way to include that component here in our overall hazing policy.
The sexual harassment you speak to is definitely covered in Title IX, or many other procedures that are here. I remember what I was going to go with. Oh, hazing. Many different pieces fall into that. Is bullying hazing? Is hazing bullying? Sexual harassment, alcohol, drugs, forcing someone to do something. I've got stacks of things that I'm working through to try and put some educational components in place in addition to this policy, and working to implement those things as soon as we can.
I would just add that KSB exists to serve school board members. So you guys can call down there and speak with attorneys. And I know, Jeremy, that you know some of the attorneys that work there. So, sometimes getting it secondhand from Jared, feel free to call down there and ask and get some of this understanding context of these issues. So I just want to throw that out there.
And I'm glad to follow up as well. I'm in contact with them often on policy related items. Okay. Anything else on that policy? Okay, I'm going to move through the rest of these here very quickly, and then we can determine where we go from here. Suspension and expulsion procedures, really there was just a clarification on appeals and the numbers of days that are listed there. KBA is the one that was left over from June as we were redoing our school website, which is looking amazing. A lot of great stuff on there. I know we're going to be adding more to it. We just wanted to make sure that everything was in place before we brought this forward. So really it's just who was designated as the keeper of the websites. I know Mr. Langren's going to be working on training many of the buildings so that those things can be kept up to date, or different departments. So school websites on KBA is a fairly insubstantial one. And then the last one on complaints, again, they rewrote this policy significantly, which affected some of those other policies, and it's on here as well. So definitely willing to answer more questions, take notes to follow up with other questions. We can accept some of these, part of these, all of these. We can accept none of them, and I can bring them back hopefully in a couple of weeks. So.
Sounds like we have quite a few questions. So would you like this to just be a first reading tonight and we wait until next meeting? Nothing was of the time was of the essence on getting that approved. Okay. So yeah, like Art said, we can reach out, or we can just all send some questions to Jared for him to look into. Thanks. I did want to ask, just to piggyback on Jamie's concerns. So when we do approve a policy, how quickly does that affect the procedures that are tied to that policy or the handbook? I know we typically approve the handbook each summer before school starts. So would we not look at it again until then? I just wasn't sure how that affected procedures.
Actually, the policy goes into place once it's approved. It does take some time to walk through the procedures with administrators and going through the scenarios, establishing guidelines. As far as the student handbooks, we're working on those as we speak. I'm hoping we can get those to you for the next reading too, but since we didn't adopt these, that may delay that a few more weeks. So student handbooks are coming soon, followed by staff handbooks, hopefully this summer, with any changes that might come about through IBB.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to make a vote to table this, or
is that what you would
make it a
prefer?
first reading, just to maybe make it a little bit cleaner?
Sure.
I would move that we table the discussion in 7G or whatever, in G there, regarding policy changes, and consider it at the next meeting.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Oh, she has to change her motion. Sorry, Casey. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Good discussion. Item 7H, Memorandum of Understanding between USD 253 and the City of Emporia.
Dr. McGee is back for the next 3 agenda items.
Okay, thank you. Before I say this, if you just give me the liberty to say, HR is a full-time job. Jared's got a lot of other things going on that could be a full-time job as well. So I appreciate the work he puts into, safety and risk management and all that could be a job. HR is a job. He's doing a good job of juggling a lot of things. I appreciate it. Okay, this MOU between the district and the city, we were getting ready to bring this last month, so you may have remembered seeing it. I know if you were on the agenda review, we talked about it, but then I pulled it because there was a little bit of confusion between different folks I was talking to at the city as to what was actually occurring. And so I just wanted to be sure that I had my arms around it before I asked you to get yours around it and vote. You guys have previously approved 4 crossing lights prior to my arrival, somewhere around $42,000. We've paid that bill. They've received that equipment. It has not been installed yet. The best answer I can get is that it looks like that will all be installed this summer. So what you've approved previously. They're doing some sidewalk improvements in some of those areas. They were doing some traffic studies and so on just to make sure that they installed it in the right places and appropriately. So I wanted to bring you up to speed on that. This MOU will actually commit the district to 50% of the cost to replace 14 additional school zone lights and upgrade 5 others to similar specifications. And by that, we mean these lights will be solar powered. They will be programmable from a desktop. They will alert someone who's monitoring them if there's a problem. If one's out, someone would know it. They don't have to go, typically wouldn't have to go unless it's some sort of equipment failure. They could reset it. They can get it going again, fix the problem from a desktop. So all of those are nice safety and efficiency features. This also includes the 10-year cost of software licensing. That's about $27,000 of the cost. The total cost of equipment, licensing, and then the upgrade that it talks about on the 5 lights, that's basically making existing lights programmable with the cell modem and all of those things that Paul could probably read that stuff and talk about it better than I could, but it will make them basically function like the ones that we're purchasing new. They have a project total of $160,000. You'll notice that all of the things that are quoted add up to around $122,000. The other costs are estimated costs for materials like stone and rock and labor, those sorts of things to make sure that it all gets put in place. But the MOU would commit us to up to $80,000 maximum. If the project isn't $160,000, then we still would only pay 50% up to $80,000. And we have this budgeted in capital outlay.
What questions does anyone have? We've talked about it. We were just waiting to kind of see the final cost on the project.
So to clarify, the lights that we approved last year, or maybe earlier this year, before tonight, those will hopefully be installed this summer. Will these lights also have that same timeline for?
I don't think these will be in by summer because they'll have to, once this is approved by us, they have to order it. They have to wait for everything to come in. So I would say it would be more like sometime during the school year. Okay. But, I know everyone wants to get them in place as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that we have the light at Maynard, which we...
You know more about it than I do.
We have a light at Maynard. And is that one that we're also looking to upgrade, or because there was some talk at one point that we could actually remove that light and put it in another spot
I
that's
think there's
needed?
still a conversation about taking that light and placing it in a different location.
Yeah, I think that would be I would love for us to have it go somewhere as opposed to.
Kate is a valuable source of information, and she's made me aware that that's a part of the conversation, and we've had that clarified recently that that is still a plan to take it and move it to a place that it's needed.
And I know you advocated for that when we first talked about it. And I thought we were going to have childcare facility there. So I wasn't 100% on board, but now I wished I'd
There's
kind
a
of
part
been
of me
on
that
board.
says we might want to wait to have them move it until we see what Maynard gets used for at some point in the future. It could, I mean, someone might consider it to be a valuable asset for whatever operations might be going there.
I think if it's a public playground, absolutely. If it's a private playground, I think it's a separate negotiation.
Yep.
Maybe we need to add that to our contract. Our bid. Whatever bid offers we get.
I need to get some clarification as to specifically where they were planning on putting it, because it may be essential to the overall plan that we need.
Sure. I guess it's across the street, so I guess we own it, but not really, right? I guess we'd need clarification on that too. Because we paid for it, but I don't think it's technically ours. That's the beauty of traffic lights, or the crosswalk lights, yeah. Okay, well, with that, would anyone like to
Yes,
make
I
a
would like
motion?
to make a motion to
Go for it.
approve the MOU between USD253 and the City of Emporia for upgrading the school zone lights as submitted.
Second.
Motion and a second, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Your next item, resurfacing of the EHS track.
Yes. We also have this project slated in the capital outlay budget. The current high school track was last resurfaced, according to Bob, my historian on this one, 11 to 12 years ago is when it was resurfaced. And it is in need of resurfacing again. And resurfacing typically will warranty the track, like a formal warranty of 3 years, but typically you're going to get potentially up to 8 years is what you should be able to get out of the resurface. Obviously, we got a few more years out of the last one, but it's important to take care of what you have and continue to protect the base with a good surface. Otherwise, you get into a point where subsurfaces and those materials underneath that surface will start to degrade, and it becomes a much more costly expenditure to completely redo a track. So we've actually quoted this through the TIPS Purchasing Cooperative, and McConnell and Associates also put in, they've done the previous resurfacing or the surfacing of the track. And so I think it's important, if we can, to have the same company come in and resurface over they know what's there. They know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate to do versus tearing it out or laying over the top of what's there. And we're recommending approval.
Any questions or further discussion?
Takes a long time to talk about all these human issues, but we can run through the money ones real fast.
I move that we approve the quote from McConnell and Associates for resurfacing the track at Emporia High School as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
J, Chromebook purchase for incoming freshmen.
Yeah, this item we're putting in our cycle of capital improvements. The board's previously approved allowing graduating seniors to the option to purchase their district issued Chromebook. So this would become an annual purchase for freshmen as they come into the high school, that get them the Chromebook that they would use throughout their high school time, whatever the latest, best model is that we can get for the right price. And this is a quote for $142,450. That includes the Chromebooks and the associated licensing for those Chromebooks.
When the policy was passed in December of 2022, was that 2021? I think it was 2021, because that was before I was on school board. Did last year's graduating class, was that the first class to have the option to purchase their Chromebooks?
I believe so, but they weren't new.
I was just
Well, I
wondering-
mean, they weren't.
Right.
Right now, you'll get it your freshman year, and
Mhm.
the whole idea was like the incentive of taking care of it.
Right. I was just curious if we had a quick number on how many students may have opted to purchase their Chromebooks.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can research that number for you.
Yeah, I was just curious. I think it's a great policy, but it was just more curiosity.
Yep, I'm curious too. Appreciate the question.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of 350 Chromebooks from CTL Corporation off of state bid as submitted.
Okay, motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. That takes us to board reports, item 8A. The Tech College Board of Trustees met on Monday. We had a highlight from the welding program, talked about funding and how it's not going to be as much, right? Same, second verse, same as the first this year as we got last year. Some different things. It was just a good, productive meeting. Yep. Employee Rec Commission.
I think at the last regular meeting of the Employee Rec Commission, we created sort of a subcommittee to appoint people to investigate and make recommendations to the Rec Commission, and then we will take those recommendations and send them to the City Commission regarding how to finance the renovation of a either renovate the Employee Rec building or build a new building, and to look at options for whether it makes more sense to renovate it or just build a new building entirely. Our rec center staff really do offer some amazing programming to our community, but our community has absolutely outgrown that building. And we're really in need for that. So that would probably be something like possibly a 0.5-cent sales tax increase, maybe some sort of bond question. There may be some bond options with the city that don't involve having to put it to a vote with citizens. But we are going to look at some different ways to do that. In other news, the Rec Commission got some more money from the City Commission to be able to man and run the Jones Aquatic Center. So hopefully this summer, none of our attractions will break. Like they did last summer, one of our slides, I think, or one of our pools went out, and that caused a bit of a delay in some services there. So it's about time to go swimming.
Insurance Committee. Did we
I
have
don't
a
believe we've met recently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jen with Wellness Committee? And then several of you were able to attend the National School Board Association convention or conference. So love to hear from you.
I just put a piece of candy in my mouth, so forgive me. No, it's always a great time to go and discuss issues with board members from across the country. And you really do. I talk to people from Alaska to Florida were there. And so, a lot of the issues we're seeing, there was a ton of people at the school safety session. I talked to some of those people, and there's a whole group of people that said there's no way we could have a public school without metal detectors. So again, it's very contextual about how we handle it here and how another district might handle it, because they were like, there's no way, we have to have metal detectors. So, but again, the different issues that are facing public education, we're seeing their countrywide issues, whether it's like Parent Bill of Rights issues. I went to a session on Parent Bill of Rights, and a lot of those issues that are covered in that type of legislation, the first thing the presenter said was, who was two attorneys, most of the stuff that is being asked for in that legislation is stuff we already do in public schools. So again, taking the time to actually read that stuff, be informed about how this could affect public education, how it could affect your kids in our community. Lots of other sessions, and again, connecting with people across to understand how open boundaries that have affected a lot of the issues that we're seeing legislatively in Kansas have already happened in Oklahoma. So again, we can look at other nearby states to see how some of these policies, if they were implemented in Kansas, could affect us, could affect our tax dollars. So I would just encourage everybody to be paying attention to that and do your own research and draw your own conclusions, but be engaged and involved in that discussion.
I would echo what Art said. It was a really great opportunity to get to not only connect with some of you all, but also to network with other school boards. And it was just really refreshing to hear about what other districts are doing. I got to attend a few sessions on teacher recruitment and retention, which is something that I'm really excited about, and got to hear some great ideas from other districts. And then went to a session on equity in school policy. So I'm super excited to get to bring some of that back to policy committee as well. And as always, it was really great to be in sunny Orlando. So that was a great time, and I'm really looking forward to the conference next year as well.
As has been mentioned, the myriad of topics is just amazing. Security, crisis communication, special education, financing, all those kinds of things. So very enlightening and very reinforcing of what we're doing sometimes compared to what the challenges are that other places are doing. But we also have a lot of shared challenges. Just a couple things I also wanted to mention. The national president this year is Frank Henderson from Topeka Seaman District. And so that was a good Kansas connection that we haven't had before. And then also John Heim, a former superintendent for 12 or 13 years here in Emporia, has been the executive director of the National School Board Association, and he did announce his retirement while we were there too. But for Emporia to have those kind of connections at a national level, it's just pretty unique. But it's nice. Those are two excellent individuals that have been at the leadership helm this past year.
Future board calendar dates. Our next meeting is Wednesday, April 26th at 6:30 here at Mary Herbert Education Center. Then we just have one meeting in May as we deal with the flurry of events at the end of the school year. And then our next meeting will be June 14th, 2023 here at 6:30 at Mary Herbert Education Center. Okay, that takes us to item 10A, executive session.
I move that we enter executive session for 20 minutes to discuss negotiation information pursuant to the exception for employer-employee negotiations under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that we return to open session in this room at 10:13. Superintendent Dr. Allison Harder, Interim Assistant Superintendent of Business, Dr. David McGehee, I can't say your last name, McGehee, I'm sorry, and Director of Human Resources, Jared Griffin, are invited to join the board for this session. No action is anticipated.
We have a motion in 2 seconds. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Who would like to motion us back in?
I move that we return to regular session.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
And with that, I would take a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Motion and a second. Please cast your votes. We say it every time, Grant. It would still pass.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.